Well, I never went surfing on the deep dark web.
I'm gonna start mine.
Make my bed. I never hired someone to break a rival's leg, so I must admit one time that lines would cross my head. No, all I ever did was make a Facebook page with interesting posts for people to engage. Before I knew it, snowflakes moved to rage. Just started fighting in the comments like those morons that I changed. Some people just can't stand memes that make them think, so they lock me in the social media clique. I got sucked, I was minding my own business, still I got sucked, just because I'm not a student.
You got your ears on?
No, I don't.
Say hi.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Okay, great. I'm just sending out this email that I meant to do earlier, so, let's see.
Not good.
Sorry.
And you heard George Stephanopoulos say it right there. We are just minutes away from the Democratic.
They're doing the initial
right
lineup right now.
Matt, Dad, I want to start with you now in our lightning round. This will be the last round of the panel because we're minutes away from this debate. Matt, you told me earlier there's a lot of big, bold ideas from the Democrats we're seeing here on stage, but you said tonight candidates need to connect with people and voters on a personal level.
Okay.
Yeah, in the end, this race is not going to be decided on ideology. It's going to be decided.
Okay, done. Hi. Should I have my ears in? Yeah, because I need to hear what's being said, right? Oh my gosh, it's happening.
It's happening.
We're early. This is weird. Usually we're late.
Mm-hmm. No, they're late. We're late.
What?
I'm
going to turn them down for a second on my screen.
Alright. Smart move. Why is he doing
Hi, Christian. I can hear you now. How are you?
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
It's his calling card. It's why he has the strength he has among Democratic voters, is because he served with a very, very popular president. It's what surprised me.
Anybody commenting yet?
When people were throwing.
Hey, Brandon, host up
Hi. Hey, Brandon.
Donnie Smith.
What's up, Donnie? How you doing?
That is not a smart strategy.
My chat isn't working.
This is
That's
going to be about
normal.
the energy. There's more about a chemistry that you're going to associate, and the closer the candidate can put their own story with the story of where people live their lives, the better they're going to be. They're not going to follow all the details about this policy versus that policy. It's about relating and they feeling that they can relate to that candidate and that they understand them where they live their lives.
This is the first time I've tried to do this scheduled broadcast.
Yeah, I still haven't figured that one out yet either. Donnie's at work.
Am I like too
Says-
closer to you? Oh, you're at work. Oh man.
It says we're live, but it's not sending it to this stupid thing. What is it sending it to?
There's so much happening here in front of me. I have no idea what's going on. Wow.
People are suffering. We talked about this. Healthcare costs are rising. People are concerned about climate.
Well, I don't know if I have the right chat box.
That's really why she's saying.
I need more chats. Okay, let's
Senator
try
Heitkamp, if you're
this.
fighting for your life tonight, do you need to go on the attack or do
Fighting
you need to
for
come out?
her
Well, we got a
life.
couple minutes to do this troubleshooting, so
What's going to win it? You need to show
I'm doing it
We're
hot.
watching this.
that stage with President Trump.
Yeah,
This is a casting
basically.
call for the Democratic candidate who is going to do the best job against Donald Trump, and that candidate
Her
Basically
her
this,
voice
yeah.
is
who is
off.
going to have
Oh, wait,
words
this is looking at the wrong
of
thing.
presidential capability and be able to stand up
Oh,
to
that's
Trump
because I've
and
opened that.
actually
Okay.
There we
win a
go.
debate against that president.
Devin, you're on the trail. Is that what voters are telling you? They want to hear how this Democrat can beat President Trump?
Yeah,
There we go. Now I figured it out.
You know, the past few days,
But I still haven't figured out the
reporting
chat.
on the suburbs here in Houston, they want what everyone said here. They want authenticity. They want direct
Wait, I have to
answers.
look
They don't
over
want
there.
spin. They can see through it.
yet.
You know, Thomas Friedman, the oldest debate coach of any HBCU, gave an interview with us today.
Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Are we really live right now on our YouTube channel?
Years.
Okay. It's like weird because I don't. I'm used to hearing
devotion to the truth. Not
intro
only the
stuff
argument,
and.
but telling the truth. And
Yeah, because they started introducing people, so
Oh, okay.
No, there is. Listen,
I get it.
President Clinton got
Whoops, what was
the
that?
kid from Hope, and his
heck?
story was relatable to where people were living their lives. President Obama was about the audacity of hope and what his
Alright, so
candidacy
what about
embodied and what it meant for them in the
numbers?
country. And it is very important to relate to people and be relatable, where they can understand what is in here. They're going to pull the hood up, and we've seen it. All of us who've been helping candidates or run ourselves, people are going to, the voters that are watching tonight and thinking about becoming Democrats in this upcoming election, they're going to
I'd
see
really
what
like
moves
this to work.
this. Not just the ideas, but what
I'm gonna give it
motivates
like
that idea.
another
Not
3
just
minutes
what that
before I have
policy
to.
is
I mean,
that
I said
problem,
I put all the
but
effort
why
in
do
to
you wanna care
schedule
about that? Why did you put
a
that at the top of
broadcast
the
so
list?
that
Yeah.
you can
Mary
like,
Bruce, I
follow
want to go
it,
to you. You've been on the campaign
etc.,
trail as well,
etc.
and something that strikes me that sort of stands out.
But now
to
it
me,
won't stream.
You have all these bold plans, these
Oh,
big ideas.
what?
You have candidates who talk about a generational shift.
I mean, I've
Yet
never
the
tried
three
this
top-tier
before, so I
candidates
guess, you know.
are all in their 70s.
Exactly. It is surprising,
Hold on.
given especially so
They're all-
much focus
wait, what?
on younger voters,
Hmm?
and yet you do. The top 3 candidates in the polls are all septuagenarians, and they are also getting some criticism
The top
for
3
their
are in their
age. It's one of the
70s.
top
Okay.
questions, an issue that often comes out when you're talking with voters is, do they feel that these candidates can relate to them, can relate to younger voters, given this generational divide? But clearly it isn't hurting them in the
We've got
polls.
3
I have to
viewers.
tell you, though, Tom,
You're doing all
this
right.
is a fairly young crowd, and they are pretty rowdy and fired up here. It's pretty remarkable, I think. We were talking about the loudest chants that we heard actually were for the hometown candidates, Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to see who sees this particular moment, this particular place, right? There have been 3 mass shootings since the last debate, 2 in
that should come up.
gun control tonight. The racial divide in America. We're at one of the largest historically black colleges in the country and one of the most diverse cities in America. Who will seize upon those 2 things?
Look, I'm wishing the moderators good luck too.
You've done this. You know
trying
what
to
this
keep
feels
this
like.
crowd quiet because so far they're pretty enthused and pretty excited
exciting.
about it tonight. One thing that I would say that we should all watch for
I
too,
closed
I
it,
know
didn't
all
I?
those
I did.
candidates are
I'm
going
a
to try and
dingus.
get the attention of the moderator in some
Oh, I
way
haven't-
or another. It might be an eye roll, it might be raising the hand. We've seen this before. But the moderators have to kind of keep the peace there and figure out how to handle it.
We're all expecting that big moment, Warren versus.
Are there someone playing the drums?
No, that's my daughter running around upstairs. She is loud when she runs.
Voters, you're out there talking to them almost
The
every
crowd
day.
should riot.
They
They
want
should.
somebody that's
That'd be
gonna
fun.
Should.
Donald Trump. They don't like the infighting among Democrats.
And you mentioned those 3 top
crowd should riot.
top tier right now. It's also those folks on the side,
There we go.
flanks that we really
There we go. Whoa, what happened?
Hey, it's working now. Holy crap. Awesome.
But I lost my feed.
They need a moment. Custer needs a moment tonight. Harris definitely needs a moment. There's a lot on the line for her. She came out.
Celeste and
fire
Porter
after
here,
that first
awesome.
debate. Her
Cool
poll
stuff.
numbers shot up. Her endorsements shot up. Her money shot up. And then she just sort of dropped and fell flat. She really needs to stay in this race for her. It's do or die
Sweet.
right now.
Okay.
There were
I'm
loud
gonna close
applause
this
for
now.
Beto O'Rourke, who's the hometown
All
guy
right.
from El Paso. But I know a lot of
Quirt,
people in this room
Celeste,
say,
how's
if you don't
audio?
do well tonight, run for the Senate.
I can
And
turn
it is
up
a big question.
the debate.
The
if you
candidates on
need
the
to.
wings, they want that moment, but they do have to pick that moment carefully because as we
We'll
saw
turn
in
it
the
up a little
last
bit.
debate, if you go too hard, you make too many
But I
attacks
still have
against
more.
one
I
of the
can
front
turn
runners,
it
it
up.
can backfire. And then you have to be
There
ready
we go.
to capitalize on
Oh,
any
that's
big
fine.
moment that you
Okay.
had. We saw that with Harris,
I
as you
can't
mentioned.
read
She
it
had
over
that
there.
boost,
Yep,
but her
right
candidates
there.
haven't been able to
Okay.
sustain it going forward.
They have to turn that moment into momentum, and some of them have been unable to do that. And that's what they're
Okay,
trying
cool.
to do. And try to inspire. Really try
so
to.
I'm gonna
I
be
tried
watching
because I
that.
knew last
Can
time
you
it was a little
fight Donald
fucky.
Trump?
So
Can
this
you
time I
bring
tried
the
to
country
make
together?
sure the audio was good
Which
out the gate.
candidate do they think can do that?
And
Yeah, there's never
differentiate
being
yourself.
prepared.
That's the big factor tonight for so many of these folks on this stage.
So much for us to be keeping a close eye on. Well, the stage is set. The field has been narrowing slowly. Everyone down here is getting ready.
Like, why is there delay on?
I just messed it
Last
all up.
final thoughts. What are you guys hoping to see tonight?
Well, the pass the torch arguments stick, Tom. We saw it in the first debate, and the millennials and the Gen X candidates have been hanging out in the wings. Can
I'm
they
excited
resurrect
for
that
Randy's to show up.
I
They
think
might
that
not
you're
today.
gonna have,
Who
two
knows?
debates, not
Who's
one
that?
debate. You're going to have obviously what it will focus
Randy's,
on the energy
you
of
know,
Biden and
normal
Warren, but who's
people.
gonna fill
Oh,
that
yes.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of
Whoops.
candidates for that third seat. There's in the music
Sure,
side,
eventually.
only one of them are going to get that
Why
seat.
do I keep doing
Big, bold ideas, energy, compassion. Will
Whoa.
you take care of me? Will
Oh,
you
yeah.
solve my
Okay.
problems?
Watch the wings, see who emerges, who can
I'm trying to click
challenge the
things
top
to make
three.
sure they're all working, and then I
energy
just
city,
make
Houston's
things
energy
broken.
city.
That's
what I'm doing.
Dave. That's exactly what he's doing right now.
It's funny because our viewers on our stream get to see all of our shenanigans, like me messing it up, you messing it up.
On a single stage,
Yeah,
Vice
it's
President
just a
Joe Biden, Senator
little
Elizabeth
fuster
Warren,
cluck.
also Senator Bernie
Well, I
Sanders. For
put
the first time, we're
commentary.
gonna watch
I
this
put commentary in my
live.
title,
We
Quirt,
cannot wait for
so
the
that people
excitement. It's
wouldn't
just about to start. The
complain
candidates have
about.
taken to the podium.
Okay. Oh, good.
There you go.
Nice,
They
nice,
literally knew
nice.
what they were getting
Right
into.
on ABC News, and of course on
Are the
ABC
closed
News
captions
Live.
big enough for you guys to see,
Streaming
Quirt?
all across the world tonight for one of the first times.
I know
they're
people
probably
can
pretty
watch on
small,
their
but
app and watch.
Yeah, probably on a phone.
Also a reminder, we have a big post-debate show as well with this powerhouse panel. We also have on top of that our team of reporters and
Gosh, I already need a drink.
as
I
well.
told Jane not to be
For all the
running
action that's happening
around.
there on the stage, and of course, we will be talking to the candidates live. We're expecting nearly all the candidates, if not all of them, to come right here to the spin room and talk with ABC News after the debates. Regardless if they have a big night, regardless if they have a bad night, we're going to press them and we're going to make sure to talk to them. For us, we're done here now in the spin room. Let's get down to the main
spin room.
That's how fitting.
Right?
Seconds away from a major night in politics. We thank you.
So they're going to commercial. Kind of sucks that I can't. Oh, I can mute them. Oh, they're not. Okay.
The stage is set. The field has been narrowed
Bang.
for one night only. The top 10
I have to watch it
candidates
over
are
here because it's weird over
Yeah,
there.
however you want to do. Yeah, I'm not looking at that at all. But I need that because I need that for this.
Special. I will be a president for every American.
You can move that over a little bit more if you would like to make that.
A struggle for the future of this country.
I meant the picture.
We fight for our country.
Oh, there you go.
That's the nature of who we are.
Honestly, if you had told me at the beginning of this race, I never would have expected
One more
Kamala
hour.
Harris to be in this
Oh, really?
Never would have expected it.
Really?
Not Kamala Harris.
Why not?
I don't
Why?
know why I said Kamala. And I meant to say Andrew Yang.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea why I said it. Because Kamala Harris's face popped up here. But
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Andrew Yang's probably like one of the weakest overall candidates still in it.
Texas. Here now, Chief Anchor George Stephanopoulos.
Oh, here's the
Good
intro.
evening and welcome to Houston. We are live from Texas Southern
Look at all the
University for
states.
tonight's Democratic debate. The top 10
Oh,
candidates
there you
are
go.
here. It's going to start right now.
I
And
might
on the
need it
stage,
a
you
little
see
louder
them.
in my ears.
They have all met the
I'm very
criteria
here,
set by the
George.
Democratic National Committee. At least 10 others have not met the threshold. So for the first time in this primary, a single debate in a single night with all the top candidates facing off. It is a critical test for candidates and their campaigns at a critical time for our country. They're going to lay out their vision for the country, their records, their differences with President Trump and each other. And we're going to do our best to bring you a lively,
There we
informative,
go.
and civil debate. I'm joined here tonight by my
All right, we got the
ABC
chat
colleague,
going on our
Moving
screen.
Tonight anchor David Muir, our national correspondent Lindsay Davis,
Okay.
and Jorge
I'd like to look
Ramos
at
from our
people's
partner
faces.
network, Univision. Jorge?
George, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to welcome Latinos across the
Okay.
country and to ask
Yeah.
about Latinx issues
no picture.
during these challenging times. En este país también se habla español. Este debate se realiza en un momento muy difícil para los latinos en Texas y en todo Estados Unidos, pero es importante que ellos sepan, que sepamos que este también es nuestro país. Let me just give you a little translation here. I'm telling Latinos that despite the fact that we are facing difficult times, this is our country too. Please.
We are delighted to be on the beautiful campus of Texas Southern University. One of the largest
I grew up real close to
historically
this place,
black colleges and
actually,
universities
so
in the country.
Really?
I would
Here
love
in the
to be
Health
there
and
for
Physical
this, but
Education building tonight, we are joined by a
What's up,
live
Celeste?
audience of 3,500 people, most invited by the Democratic National Committee, and of course some of the brightest minds of the student body here at TSU. Go Tigers!
You can feel the energy in the room, can't we, Lindsay? The rules of this debate are very basic tonight and have been agreed to by all the campaigns in advance. Candidates will have 1 minute, 15 seconds to answer a direct question and 45
Oh,
seconds
that's nice.
for a
They
rebuttal.
got a
or
giant
response
timer in
as
the
directed by
background.
one of the moderators. Candidates will
Very
each see
easy.
three
Thinking that'll
seconds.
help.
Somebody can
They'll see
ignore.
them
What?
right there.
They're thinking that'll
Time they
help.
have remaining.
Yeah, that's
and
not
when
gonna
time
help
is
them.
up, the light will turn
Be like,
red.
wrap it up, B.
Candidates who interrupt will be subject to having their time reduced later on. But this is democracy, the great American experiment, and the candidates are here tonight.
yeah, that way you have closed captions in case we talk over some of the stuff that they say, if you want to hear any of this.
Oh, wow,
But
nice.
I will be paying attention to the important things like the opening statements and stuff like that. But
And we're going to begin in
Yeah,
reverse
mine doesn't
polling
have
order
closed
with Secretary
captions.
Julian Castro.
I'm not being considerate.
speaking of which,
Good evening.
here we go.
Y bienvenidos a Texas.
Right away.
Welcome to Texas. It's great to be here
It
at
just says speaking in
TSU, home of the
Spanish. I love
Tigers.
it.
Oh, it's this is gonna be all
January
Spanish in
20th,
Texas.
2021 at 12:01 p.m.
All right, let's get settled
President,
Court says you look pretty, Mary.
House and a
Oh,
Democratic
thank
Senate.
you. Thank you so much.
There will be life
Oh, yeah.
after
You can see
Donald
his if you
Trump.
want.
But But the truth
Everything's
is
so tiny for me.
our problems didn't start just with Donald Trump.
Kendra says
And we
it's
won't
gay.
solve them by embracing old ideas. We need a bold vision.
Hi, Aaron.
Universal pre-K and universal health care. Unleashing millions of new jobs in the clean energy economy. A tax system that rewards people who have to work for a living.
Extra gay.
Extra.
But first we have to win. And that means exciting a young, diverse coalition of Americans who are ready for a bold future.
We
That's
didn't bring
what
shot glasses, did we?
Kennedy did. It's what Carter did. It's what Clinton did. It's what Barack Obama did. And it's what I can do in this race. Get back Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Florida, Georgia, and Arizona, and finally turn Texas blue and say goodbye
That's a
to
bold
Donald
claim.
Trump.
Turn Texas
Wow,
blue.
yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be tricky.
Senator Klobuchar.
It's historically red, right?
I believe that
Historically,
what unites us up here, the
extremely
10
red.
of us, is much stronger than what divides us. And I think that's true of our country, too. Now, I may not be the loudest person up here, but I think we've already got that in the White House.
Oh my
Houston,
God! I
we
knew
have a
that was going to happen.
We have a guy
Dag.
there that is literally running our country like a game show. He would rather lie than lead. I think we need something different. I am someone that tells the truth. I don't make promises that I can't keep. I have people's back, and I believe that to win, you bring people with you, and that is how you govern as well. So you're going to hear a lot of ideas up here. Some will be great, but if you see that some of them seem a little off track, I've got a better way. If you feel stuck in the middle of the extremes in our politics and you are tired of the noise and the nonsense, you've got a home with me. Because I don't want to be the president for half of America. I want to be the president
That's
for
not
all
how
of
democracy
America.
works. You get to be the president of half.
Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
It's an honor to be on this debate
I
stage.
never would've
It is
expected him.
wonderful
No.
to be back in Texas,
That was you?
No.
in Houston,
Oh, yeah.
back here at TSU. On August 3rd, in El Paso, Texas, two things became crystal clear for me, and I think
getting
produced
started.
a turning point.
Hey,
Uh-oh.
what's up with that? Why does it keep pausing?
Of his presidency. A racism and violence that had long been a part of America was welcomed out into the open and directed to my hometown of El Paso, Texas, where 22 people were killed, dozens more grievously injured by a man carrying a weapon he should never have been able to buy in the first place,
Inspired to kill.
by our president. The
You're ahead of
second
me.
is how insufficient
You said it
our
at the exact
politics
same
is to
time he
meet
did on
the
my
threat
stream.
that we have right now. The bitterness, the pettiness, the smallness of the moment, the incentives to attack one another and try to make differences without distinctions, mountains out of molehills. We have to be bigger. We have to see clearly. We have to speak honestly, and we have to act decisively.
Never in
That's
a
what I want to
million
do for
years
you
when he
as
was running
President
for
of the
Senate
United
did I
States.
expect him to be
Thank you.
running for president.
Really?
Literally 2 years later.
Senator Cory Booker.
Hey, it's your boy.
It was over 20
Love
years ago
Cory
that I was
Booker.
a law student and moved to
He loves
inner
his
city
eyes.
Newark, New
Get
Jersey.
Spartacus out of here,
To serve
please.
as a tenants rights lawyer.
Can't
to try to
stand this
address
guy.
The challenges in my
Needs to
community,
leave.
and I was sobered by
Dave
them.
loves
The
his crazy
gun
eyes.
violence,
I love the crazy eyes.
substandard housing, but it was my greatest mentor, a woman named Miss Virginia Jones, who challenged me. She said, "Boy, if all you see in this neighborhood is problems, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're stubborn and defiant and going to put forth a vision that can unify people, then we can make transformative change." She was a church woman that said, without vision,
Hello, Aaron.
the people will perish. Well, that's exactly what we did. We created extraordinary unity in our community, and we
If I
did
refresh
things that
this,
other
if I
people
can.
thought was impossible. That's the story of America. At our best, we unify. We find common cause and common purpose.
I'm gonna try it.
Do it, Dave.
Beat Donald Trump, but to unite America in common cause and common purpose. That's why I'm running for president, and that's how I will lead this nation.
It's amazing when you get 10 people to say the same thing in 10 different ways.
Entrepreneur Andrew Yang.
Except for this guy, he's kind of weird.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again, instead of the other way around.
Oh, David's watching
we have
on
to see ourselves as the
Christmas
owners and
stream.
shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine. When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves
His
more
head's
than our
just set a little too
politicians.
far back.
That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that. This is how we will get our country.
Who doesn't want $1,000 a month? That's from his campaign fund. I'll sign up for that. Hold on, let me get my browser open.
Oh, how is that open? Oh, it must be a button I hit.
It's original, I'll give you that.
He's literally
The American
selling-
people
oh my
are
God.
divided
That's crazy.
and doubtful at the very moment we need to rise to some of the greatest challenges we've ever seen. As a mayor of an industrial city coming back from the brink, as a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, I know what's at stake in our national leadership. We keep sending politicians to Washington, asking them to fight for us, but then when they get there, they seem more interested in the part about fighting than the part about us. Good politics is supposed to be not about the day-to-day fights of the politicians, but about the day-to-day lives of Americans. We just marked the anniversary of 9/11. All day today, I've been thinking about September 12th, the way it felt when for a moment
I've seen this all
we came
over
together
Facebook.
as a country.
Every
Imagine if
day
we'd been
needs to
able
be like
sustain
September 12th.
that unity.
Oh.
Imagine what would be possible
Oh, when everybody's driving around with the
ideas
flags
that
off their
are
cars
bold
and
enough
stuff.
to meet the challenges of our time, but big enough as well that they could
I was a
unify
status
the
back
American
then, and it was a good feeling.
That's what
Everybody was
presidential
connected.
leadership can do. That's what the presidency is for, and that is why I'm asking for your vote.
How old is he again? Like 36? Like he's barely old enough to be
Senator
president.
Kamala
Not
Harris.
that it really matters, but
Thank you. It's great to be back at TSU.
Younger than me.
So I plan on spending tonight talking with you about my plans to address the problems that keep you up at night.
you keep
But
me up at
first, I
night.
have a few words for Donald Trump, who we all know is watching. So, President Trump, you've spent the last 2.5 years full-time trying to sow hate and division among us. And that is why we've got nothing done.
I hate the guy,
You
and
have
I don't
used
even say
hate,
that.
intimidation, fear, and over 12,000 lies as a way to distract from your failed policies and your broken promises. The only reason you've not been indicted is because there was a memo in the Department of Justice that says a sitting president cannot be charged with a crime. But here's what you don't get.
That doesn't sound right.
What you don't get is that the American people
It's called the
are so much better than this. And
Unitarian
you know that the vast
authority,
majority of us
or
have so much more
executive
in common than
unitary
what separates
theory,
us,
or the
regardless
unitary
of our
executive
race,
theory. How about
where
that?
we
So you
live,
can really go out and shoot
which
somebody?
we're registered
Yeah,
to
Brandon,
vote.
I think she
And
did.
I plan on
If the
focusing
president
on
does
our
it,
common issues,
can't
our
be
common
illegal.
hopes and desires, and in that way unifying our country, winning this election,
That's how we
and
got the
turning
Iraq
the
War,
page for
basically.
America.
Ah.
And now, President Trump,
Good
you can go
stuff.
back to watching Fox
Unitary
News.
executive theory. Yeah, I used to think she had a chance. I don't think she has a chance anymore. I think it's a good chance. I can't stand her.
Senator Bernie Sanders.
Oh, Aaron just signed up for those bags.
I saw that pop up, but I didn't hear it.
Senator Sanders.
Did you hear it?
Let me be blunt.
It's really quiet.
and tell you what you don't hear much about in Congress or in the
fingerprint.
media.
Get some
And
help.
that is, it goes without
Give me the Bernie
saying
hands.
that we must and
Give me the
will
tapioca hands.
defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in the history of this country.
He needs to clear his throat.
Yeah, it's bothering
We
Mary.
must do more. We must do more.
Two more.
We have got to recognize that this country is moving into an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control
Celeste said,
the economic
redistribute
and
that man a
political
cough drop.
life of this country. And as president, I am prepared
Celeste.
to take them on. Yes, we
That's
will
awesome.
raise the minimum wage to a living wage.
I got that one.
Yes, we will finally make sure that every American has health care as a human right.
Brandon,
not a
does that audio
privilege.
work?
And yes, we will address the catastrophic crisis of climate change and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
If you don't support Sanders, you need to self-reflect.
So
I don't really support any of these people, but Sanders is kind of a better candidate now, so I don't really understand that. I feel like you'd be more of a Warren person.
Here in Texas, that was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about a half mile down the road from here
at the reservation.
University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job.
Should have told the story.
I got to finish my 4-year
Celeste Aaron stealing your line for a meme.
Teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids, and when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt, and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken. I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Typical Warren. I'm interested if she's going to bring up anything new today to try to
That's way too loud.
That one's a little loud, Dave.
Here's the phrase that sticks in me my whole life. He said, we're doing it because we refuse to postpone. Well, I refuse to postpone one.
I never said I supported Warren. I want to make that very clear.
Cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases, which if we invest in them, we can find cures. I refuse to postpone giving every single child in America, no matter their zip code, pre-K all the way through high school and beyond. I refuse to postpone any longer taking on climate change and leading the world in taking on climate change. Look, this is the United States of America.
I said I'm surprised you don't lean more for Warren than Sanders.
When we've set our mind to something, we've been unable to do it. We're walking around with our heads down like, woe is me. We're the best equipped nation in the world to take this on. It's no longer time to postpone. We should get moving. There's enormous, enormous opportunities once we get rid of Donald Trump.
Uncle Bill.
He looks a little bit younger
Thank
tonight
you.
than he did last time. He looks
Several
really
of you said
sad.
we're more united than divided, and that is
last time.
certainly true. All of you agree on one big
Divided.
thing: the goal of defeating President Trump, driving the country in a new direction. But out on the campaign trail, you have outlined big differences over how far to go and how fast to go. And Vice PresidentIden, the difference
kinda
between
zoned
you
out.
and the
Did he say
senators
anything
on
good?
either side of you tonight strike at the heart of this primary
Everything
debate.
everyone else said.
Both Senators Warren and Sanders
Same
want to
stuff.
replace Obamacare with Medicare for all. You want to build on Obamacare, not scrap it. They propose spending far more than you to combat climate change and tackle student loan
Hey, thanks,
debt.
Aaron.
And they would raise
Now
more
that you got that
taxes than you pay for
pre-approved
their programs.
sharing.
Are Senators Warren and Sanders pushing too far beyond where Democrats want to go and where the country needs to go?
That'll be for the voters to decide that question. Let me tell you what I think. I think we should have a debate on health care. I think
He does
I
have
know
like a
that
velvety,
the senator
gruff
says she's
voice, though.
for Bernie. Well, I'm for Barack. I think the
reassuring.
Obamacare worked. I think the way in which we add to it, replace everything that's been cut, add a public option, guarantee that everyone will be able to have affordable insurance, number one. Number two, I think we should be in a position of taking a look at what costs are. My plan for health care costs a lot of money. It costs $740 billion. It doesn't cost $30 trillion. $3.4 trillion a year, it turns out, is twice what the entire federal budget is.
God.
That's before
He's
it
right,
exists
though.
now, without interest on
He's
the
not
debt.
lying.
How are we going to pay for it? I want to hear tonight how that's happened. So as far, my distinguished friend, the senator on my left, has not indicated how she pays for it. And the senator has, in fact, come forward and said how he's going to pay for it, but he gets about halfway there. There's a lot of other things that need to be done.
Ew, Cotton Eye Joe. Oh, come on. Quit pausing on me.
Title I schools from 15 to $45 billion a year. But I go down the line, and each of the things we're talking about, I lay out how I can pay for it, how I can get it done, and why it's better.
Senator Warren, let me take that to you, particularly on what Senator Biden was saying there about health care. He's actually praised Bernie Sanders for being candid about his health care plan. That Senator says that Senator Sanders has been candid about the fact that middle class taxes are going to go up and most of private insurance is going to be eliminated. Will you make that same admission?
So let's be clear about health care, and let's actually start where Vice President did. We all owe a huge debt to President Obama, who fundamentally transformed health care in America and committed this country to health care for every human being.
I mean,
and now the question is,
nationalized health care has been in the docket since like the 80s.
And I believe the best way we can do that
What do
is
you
we
mean by
make
that?
sure that
They can just do it whenever they want?
by health care at the lowest possible cost.
No, I mean they've been
How do
voting
we
on
pay
it for
for
literally like 3 decades now.
Oh, but for some reason it doesn't pass.
The richest individuals and the biggest corporations are
We
going
had
to pay
conservative
more. And
governments for
middle-class
the last 3
families
decades
are going to
until
pay
Obama.
less. That's how this is going to work.
Direct question.
Yeah.
You said middle-class families are going to pay less, but will
Be nice,
middle-class
Caleb.
taxes go up
We're in public.
to pay for the program? I know you believe that the deductibles and the premiums will go down. Will middle-class taxes go up? Will private insurance be eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost, total cost. That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist. Every time an insurance company says, sorry, that doctor is out of network.
Aaron is here. I
Sorry,
never said
we
hi to
are not
Aaron.
covering that prescription. Families are paying
done messed up,
every
Aaron!
time. They don't get a prescription filled because they can't pay for it. They don't
So
have
excited.
a lump checked out because they can't afford the copay. What we're talking about here is what's going to happen in families' pockets, what's going to happen in their budgets. And the answer is on Medicare for All. Costs are going to go up for wealthier individuals, and costs are going to go up for giant corporations. But for hardworking families across this country, costs are going to go down, and that's how it should work under Medicare for All in our health care system.
Senator Sanders, you were invoked by the Vice
Wait,
President.
what?
Also taking
I
on
have
that
some
question about
douchebags
taxes.
standing outside my window, so I'm gonna go close it and tell them to shut the fuck up. I'll be right back.
That's exciting.
$30 trillion. That's right, Joe. Status quo over 10 years will be $50 trillion.
No, he's got the gritty, but he doesn't have the velvety that Joe Biden has. He just has that angry gritty.
to providing health care to every man, woman, and child in this country. I, who wrote the damn bill, if I may say so.
He loves to say that. I wrote the damn thing.
Thanks for endorsing it.
I wrote the damn thing.
All deductibles, all co-payments. Nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs
No.
because we're going to stand up to the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. We need a healthcare system that guarantees health care to all people as every other major country does, not a system which provides $100 billion a year in profit for the drug companies and the
I hope Christian's
insurance
okay.
companies. And to tell you how absurd the system is, tonight on ABC, the healthcare industry will be advertising.
Christian, are you okay?
How bad Medicare for all is.
Because we can't do much because you're like all the way across the country.
That is absurd.
Vice President Biden, you were
Country,
involved.
world. Yeah, you're on the other side of the
You
world.
get a
Sorry.
response, then we're going to broaden out the discussion.
Okay, number one, my health care plan does significantly cut the cost of it. The largest out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000. You'll be able to get into anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare
Everything okay?
option
Yeah,
we
right?
have, et cetera. But guess what?
Me?
Of the 160
Yeah.
million people who like
I
their
just told them to shut up, and then they tried to give me their life story.
They don't
I
like
was
it,
like, no,
they
no,
can
no,
leave.
no,
Number
shut
one.
up. And then I closed the window.
The fact of the matter is, we're in a situation where, if you notice, he hadn't answered the question. This is about candor.
I'm gonna stop you
honesty,
right
big
there.
ideas. Well, let's have a big idea. The tax of 2% that the senator's talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a
bright-eyed
deductible
and
in your
bushy-tailed
paycheck.
today, I tell you.
Yeah, he's all coked up.
Much different than last time.
3 kids, they're going to end up paying $5,000
Well, he got beat
more.
down last
They're
time,
gonna
right?
end up paying 4% more on their income
I had to
tax.
do this
That's
last time, but like,
reality.
why
That's
is
not a
Joe
bad idea if
Biden
you
right
like
about
it.
this?
I
Why
know
do I
this
have
is-
to say that he's
Okay, now,
right?
I want everybody to keep it tight. You did invoke both senators. I have to
Dial
get
him
responses,
inside.
and then we'll go.
Yeah.
Senator Warren, you go first.
So
He's
let's be
not
clear.
wrong.
I've
His math
actually
is
never
good.
met anybody who likes their health
I
insurance
can't stand
company.
him.
I've met people who like their doctors. I met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their pharmacists. Met people who like their physical therapists.
Miguel's got an interesting idea.
What they want is access to health care. And we just need to be clear about what Medicare for All is all about. Instead of paying premiums into insurance companies and then having insurance companies build their profits by saying no to coverage, we're going to do this by saying everyone is covered by Medicare for All. Every health care provider is covered. And the only question here in terms of difference is where to send the bill.
Senator Sanders.
Let us be clear, Joe.
Oh.
In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
This is America.
Yeah, but Americans don't want to pay twice as much as other countries. And they guarantee health care to all people under my Medicare for All proposal. When you don't pay out of
Doesn't
pocket,
include supplementary insurances, just out of just for information.
Their premiums. I haven't. What people want is cost-effective health care. Medicare for All will save the average American substantial sums of money on his or her health care bill.
Senator Klobuchar, you said in your opening statement you want to represent the people stuck in the middle of the extremes. Who represents the extreme on this stage?
I think you know that I don't agree with some of these proposals up here, George. So I'm talking
Which
about
ones?
if I could respond to some of the proposals from my friends. First of all, Senator Sanders and I have worked valiantly to bring down the cost of pharmaceuticals. That was a Klobuchar-Sanders amendment to allow for drugs to come in from less expensive countries like Canada. We have worked to bring down the cost by fighting to allow 43 million seniors, that's a bill I lead, to negotiate for better prices under Medicare.
Tulsi?
I figure that's a lot of seniors and they should be allowed to get a better price.
But
when it comes to our health care and when it comes to our premiums, I go with the doctor's creed, which is do no harm. And while Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill.
The fuck is Tulsi?
And on page 8 of the bill, it says that we will no longer have private insurance as we know it. And that means that 149 million Americans will no longer be able to have their current insurance.
Shut this off. We'll go
That's
watch
in
some
4
Cutie
years.
Pie or something.
I don't think that's a bold idea. I think it's a bad idea. And what I favor is something that what Barack Obama wanted to do from the very beginning, and that is a public option, a nonprofit choice that will bring down the cost of insurance, cover 12 million more people, and bring down the prices for 13 million more people. That is a
It's the most ethical way to do it. An opt-in system is the most ethical way to do it.
149 people will lose their health insurance.
I'm sorry.
She said page 8 of the bill, 149 people will lose their
Here,
health
you can
insurance.
mess with Christian's stream by saying what they're saying while they say it.
No.
Let's be clear about this.
Let's be clear about this.
People will have access.
People will have access
to all of their doctors, all of their nurses, their community hospitals, their rural hospitals, doctors.
Hi, Jack.
To hire people to fill out crazy forms.
We got a Bernie
They
and
don't
a
have
Joe
to spend
supporter.
time on the phone arguing
nice.
with insurance companies. People
You're not
who
gonna have a good
sick
time.
Family members
Yes, you are.
don't
Yeah,
have
you're gonna
to
hang
get
out.
into
It'll be
these
fun.
battles. What this is about
That's
is
too bad that
making
Tulsi wasn't
sure
allowed on.
that we have the most
That's
efficient
upsetting.
way possible to pay for health care for
Enraged.
everyone in this country. Insurance companies last year sucked $23 billion in profits out of the system. How did they make that money? Every one of those $23 billion was made by an insurance company saying no to your health care company.
Mayor Buttigieg.
Another beer,
The
please.
problem, Senator Sanders, with that damn bill that you wrote.
That damn bill.
That damn bill.
Is that it doesn't trust the American people.
He said, damn.
I trust you to choose what makes
I
the
thought Christian
most
got rid
sense
of us
you.
for a second there.
Not my way or the highway. Now, look, I think we do have to go far beyond tinkering with the ACA. I propose Medicare
Oh, the
for
little
all
butler
who
guy.
want it. We take a version of Medicare, we make it available for the American
Your
people.
car is ready,
and if
sir.
we're right,
Shit.
What happened?
Ours just keeps messing up.
why don't you?
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds.
George, you talked about, was it 150 million
I don't
people on
support
private insurance?
most of these measures at all, but I think a public option is probably the most ethical if we were going to do it. If we had to.
If it has to happen.
I don't know what that means.
Changes their insurance policy.
Opt-in system.
Yeah,
like
as long as
Obamacare.
it's voluntary. Like a voluntary Obamacare?
All basic needs, including
Without the tax penalty, basically.
Cough drop means made. Thanks, Aaron. Cough drop means made.
Company programs do not.
Nice.
So if you want comprehensive health care, freedom of choice regarding doctor or hospital, no more than $200 a year for prescription
Every time my video
drugs.
messes up, we get
Taking
further
on
ahead of
the
you.
drug companies and the insurance companies, moving to Medicare for all is the way to go.
Senator Harris, you started out co-sponsoring Senator Sanders' bill. You now say you're uncomfortable with it. Why?
Oh, sweet
I want to
Aaron.
give credit first to Barack Obama for really bringing us this far. We would not be here if he hadn't the courage, the talent, or the will to see us this far. I want to give credit to Bernie.
She does this
Take
every
credit,
time.
Bernie. You brought us this far in Medicare for all. I support Medicare for all. I always have, but I wanted to make the plan better, which I did. Which
I'm
is
sure
about
he hates his
offering
name getting
people
dropped all the
choice,
time.
not taking that from them.
Thanks,
So under my
Obama. Like
Medicare
literally,
for all plan,
actually thinks Obama.
people have the choice of a private plan or a public plan because that's what people want. And I agree we shouldn't take choice from people. But here's the thing.
So you take toys?
Everybody on this
Like
stage, I do
toys.
believe, is well-intentioned and wants that all Americans have coverage and recognizes that right now 30 million Americans don't have coverage. But at least 5 people have talked,
Wait a
some
minute.
repeatedly on this subject, and not
We're not
once have we
echoing,
talked
are we?
about Donald Trump. So let's talk about the fact that Donald Trump came into office and spent almost the entire first year of his term trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. We all fought against it, and then the late, great John McCain, at that moment at about 2 o'clock in the morning, killed his attempt to take health care from millions of people in this country. Fast forward to today, and what is happening? Donald Trump's Department of Justice is trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Donald Trump's administration is trying to get rid of the ban that we placed on denying people who have pre-existing conditions coverage. Donald Trump is trying to say that our kids up to the age of 26 can no
He's
longer
dead, so
be
everyone has to
on
love him
our
now.
plans. And
One.
frankly, I think this discussion has given the American public a headache. What they want to know is that they're going to have
The only
healthcare
reason
and cost will not
I
be
hate
a
her
barrier
talking
to
about
getting it.
this
But let's
is because
focus
it
on
doesn't
the end
matter
goal.
if she
If
wins.
we don't get Donald Trump out of
Like,
office, he's going to
None
get
of those people in that room are going to vote for Trump. None of them. Not a single one of them even
Let me get to Congressman
considered
O'Rourke
it.
and then bring you. Go ahead, Mr. Vice
15
President.
seconds.
Yeah, who's
Everybody
she
says
pandering
you want an
to?
option. The option I'm proposing is a Medicare for all, Medicare for choice. If you want Medicare, if you lose the job from your insurance company, from your employer, you automatically can buy into this. You don't have no pre-existing condition can
Was he
stop you from
he's reaching at
buying
Bernie?
in. You get covered. Period.
Is he touching
And if you
Bernie?
notice, nobody's yet said how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. I hear this large
rubbing.
savings. The president thinks,
Just get me through
my
this.
friend from Vermont thinks that the employer is going to give you back if you negotiate his union all these years, got a cut in wages because you got insurance. They're going to give back that money to the employee?
Matter of fact, they will.
Well, let me tell you something. For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
Senator Sanders. 2 points. You got to defend the fact that
Brutal.
today, not only do we have 87
I hate the guy, but he's
uninsured and underinsured, you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt. You know why they're going bankrupt? Because they suffered a terrible disease, cancer or heart disease. Under my legislation, people will not go into financial ruin because they suffered with a diagnosis of cancer. And our program is the only one that does that.
I know a lot about cancer. Let me tell you something.
Oh,
It's
yeah, I bet you
personal to
do.
me. Let me tell you something. Every single person who's
Savage
diagnosed
Joe.
with cancer or any other disease can automatically become part of this plan. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They will not go bankrupt because
Will
of that.
not
They can
go into
join
financial
immediately.
ruin.
And we're talking 4, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on who you talk about, before we get to Medicare for all. Come on. I've been there. You've been there. You know what it's like. People need help now, hope now, and do something now.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Thank you. Listen, I'm
guy's
grateful
still
that
here.
we all agree
This guy.
with the urgency of this challenge and the fact that Donald Trump
Dude, they're gonna bring you on. Come back in.
limited protections that we have right now. But I also think we're being offered a
Is
false
he gonna
choice
take the high
between
ground?
those who propose an
Is he gonna do
all-or-nothing
it?
gambit, forcing tens of millions off of insurance that they like, that works for them, to force them onto Medicare, and others who want to, as a vice president does, incrementally improve what we have, which will
Beto.
still leave many, maybe millions, uninsured and uncared
Yeah,
for
they'll just die,
in a state
exactly.
like Texas, where the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. We've got to do better. In my proposal, Medicare for America says everyone who's uninsured will be enrolled in Medicare. Everyone who's insufficiently insured, cannot afford it, can move over to Medicare. And those, like members of unions who fought for the health care plans that work for them and their families, are able to keep them. That is the best possible path forward.
Healthcare is the top issue for everyone in the country. I want to make sure everyone gets 1 minute to respond. So, Senator Secretary Castro, Andrew Yang, and then
Where'd that big
Senator
timer go?
Booker,
I haven't
you
been
get
looking.
it.
Thank you. And, I also want to recognize the work that Bernie has done on this. And, of course, we owe a debt of gratitude to President Barack Obama. Of course, I also work for President Obama, Vice President Biden, and I know that the problem with your plan is that it leaves 10 million people uncovered. Now, on the last debate stage in Detroit, you said that wasn't true when Senator Harris brought that up. There was a fact check of that, and they said that was true. I grew up with a grandmother who had type 2 diabetes, and I watched her condition get worse and worse. But that whole time, she had Medicare. I want every single American family to have a strong Medicare plan available.
That's Castro. Yeah, what was
If
gonna
they
say before it popped
choose
up.
to hold on to strong, solid private health insurance, I believe they should be able to do that. But the difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President
Bankrupt
Biden,
doesn't
is that
mean
you
making a
require them to
profit.
opt in, and I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in.
That it's
That's
not
a big
making a
difference because
profit.
Barack Obama's
Be a
vision was not to
non-profit
leave
organization
10 million
and not be
people
bankrupt.
uncovered. He wanted
Bankrupt is like
every
your
single
solvency.
person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your
Clearly
plan
see
would
with
not.
both eyes.
Have to buy in.
What is happening?
Do not have to buy in.
I'm sorry if you care about
You just said that 2
Julian
minutes
Castro
ago.
and me talking
You just
over
said
him.
2 minutes ago that they would have to buy
Oh, we're
in.
talking over everybody.
You said they would have to buy in.
To buy in. It's
No,
Are you
now you're just
forgetting what you
lying,
said 2 minutes
Julian,
ago?
because you have no principles and you're a candidate who says vote me because I'm Latino, and nobody has the balls to say that up
They had
there.
to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
I said anyone
I mean,
like your
look,
grandmother who has no money. She would.
Oh, don't you bring my grandma
hear you,
into this.
enrolls people regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not. If you lose your job, for instance,
Such a douchebag.
his healthcare plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My healthcare plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama.
I mean, just
and
look
you're
at his
not.
face. He has that like I am so much better than you way of like no matter who it is.
This is why
It's not even like a competitive honesty.
This reminds everybody of what they cannot stand about Washington. Scoring points against each other, poking at each
Andrew
other,
Yang did it.
and telling
This
each
is
other
why they're
that
on
you're my plan, your plan. Look, we all
That's
have
called the
different
Democratic
visions for
primary
what is
election.
better about
That's
our
called an election.
That's how I feel about the vape ban.
You know, this is what we're here for. It's an election.
But a house,
Became a good
house
commie, right?
divided cannot stand. And that is not how we're
Look,
going to
everyone, we know we're on the same team here.
Mal's
We
gonna
know
try
we're
to
on the
come in
same
and be like,
team.
"Guys, don't have a food
We all have a
fight."
better vision for healthcare than our current president. And I believe we're talking about this the wrong way. As someone who has run a business, I know that our current healthcare system makes it harder to hire people, makes it harder to give them benefits and treat them as
Got it,
full-time
Aaron, thanks.
employees who instead pretend they're contractors. It's harder to change jobs.
See, it's
It's
bothering me
certainly
that
harder to start
this
a
is
business.
lagging from
The
us.
pitch we have to make to the American people is we will get the healthcare
they
weight
ever have a
off of
commercial,
your
I'll fix
backs
it.
and then unleash the hopes and dreams of the American people.
Senator
Now,
Booker.
I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors.
No, you're not.
And they
You're not
tell me that they
believing
spend
me.
a lot of time on paperwork, avoiding being sued, and navigating the insurance bureaucracy. We have to change the incentives so instead of revenue and activity, people are focused on our health in the healthcare system. And the Cleveland Clinic, where they're paid not based upon how many procedures they prescribe, shocker, they prescribe
I am
fewer
white,
procedures,
so I know a lot of
and
school
health
students.
stays the same or improves. That is the pitch to the American people.
Senator Booker, close out this discussion.
Thank you very much.
Uh-oh, what happened there?
It just keeps doing that.
Oh, okay.
home
but we're
right
gonna
now
miss
listening
Booker.
to us that are afraid because they are in crisis. They don't have health insurance. Their health insurance doesn't go far enough.
I wonder if I
Can't
can back
afford
it up.
prescription drugs. Look, I'm clear in what I believe. I believe in Medicare for all. I believe it's the best way to rationalize the system. But dear God, I know that every one of my colleagues on this stage is in favor of universal health coverage and comes at this with the best of intentions. And I'll tell you, there is an urgency
He's just
right
fun
now.
to watch, though.
Everybody feels it. And as a person who has an ideal, I know we cannot
He could literally tell me he was going to
progress on the
abolish
altar
the
of
entire
purity.
government, and I'd
Because
still be
people in my
like, shut up,
community,
get
they
out of
need
my
help
face.
right now. They have high blood pressure right
Get your
now.
eyes fixed.
Unaffordable insulin right now. And this must be a moment where we as
Yeah,
Democrats
voluntary
take the
unions
show
are
that
fine.
we can not only
It's mandatory
stake and stand
unions that are
our ground, but find
bad,
common ground
unethical.
because we've
I'm
got
gonna try backing
one
off the
shot
quality
to
meals.
make Donald Trump a one-term president. And we cannot
Oh, we're getting
lose
closer
it
now.
by the way we talk about
By the way
each
we
other
talk
or
about it.
demonize and degrade each other. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. If I am
Wow.
the leader, I will work towards the
Bold.
ideal of health insurance, health coverage being a right for all Americans. But every single
Speak
day,
for
I'll
yourself,
join
buddy.
with other Democrats to make progress happen in our nation for the people that are struggling and suffering today.
Candidates, thank you. Lindsay Davis.
Thanks, George. Since we're here at an HBCU, I'd like to start with young black voters. Several recent polls indicate their number one concern is racism. This campus, this state,
I wonder why
and
that
this
would be.
nation are still raw from that racially motivated attack on Latinos in El Paso. Now, we know that the racial divide started long before President Trump and President Obama.
Does she have a
Each of you
mustache?
on this stage has said that President Trump has made that divide worse.
It's okay if you say
Congressman
it.
O'Rourke, coming
Might
to
be
you first.
shading.
Why are you the most qualified candidate to address this divide?
You know, I called this out in no uncertain terms
I'm
on
not
August
one of them,
3rd
Aaron.
and every day since then. And I was
One of
talking
the
about
people
it
who knows
long
who
before then
E40 is.
as well. Racism in America is endemic. It is foundational. We can
That's
mark
weird.
the creation of this country not at the 4th of July, 1776, but August 20th, 1619, when the first kidnapped African was
White
brought to this
privilege.
country against his will and in bondage and as a slave, built the greatness and the success and the wealth that neither he nor his descendants would ever be able to fully participate in and enjoy. We have to be able to answer this challenge, and it is
That's where you want
found
to
in
mark
our
the
education
beginning
system,
of
where
a
in
country?
Texas, a 5-year-old child in kindergarten is 5 times as likely to be disciplined or
This guy is
suspended
very
or
hateable.
expelled based on the color of their skin. In our healthcare system, where there's a
That's
maternal
from
mortality
2012.
crisis
Something.
3 times as
Very
deadly
old
for
statistic.
women of color, or the fact that there's 10 times the wealth in white America than there is in black America. I'm going to follow Sheila Jackson Lee's lead and sign into law a reparations bill that will allow us to address this at its foundations.
Nah.
But we will
Sorry you
also
lost
call
me.
out the fact that we have a white supremacist in the White House, and he poses a
What?
mortal threat to people of color all across this country.
Secretary Castro, 45 seconds to respond.
Yeah, man.
I'm
Sorry.
about ready, Bill.
I want to commend
I
Beto
acknowledge
for
the
how well
fact
he has
that a lot of
spoken,
bad things
to
happen
the-
in history,
the
but
passion, the frustration, and the
Touching my
sadness
money.
after what happened in his hometown of El Paso.
I wasn't
He did a
there,
great
dude.
job with that. Look, a few weeks ago, a shooter drove 10 miles inspired by this 10 hours
wants
inspired by
these
this president to kill people who look like me
Reparations.
and people who look like my family. White supremacy is a growing threat to this country, and we have to root it out. I'm proud that I put forward a plan to disarm hate. I'm also proud that I was the first to put forward a police reform plan, because we're not going to have any more Laquan McDonald's or Eric Garners or Michael Browns or Pamela Turners or Walter
Where's
Scott
that?
or Sandra Bland here from the Houston area. We need to root out racism, and I believe that we can do that because that doesn't represent the vast majority of Americans who do have a good heart. They also need a leader to match that, and I will be a president that matches that.
Disarm the
Senator
cops.
Booker, you have said, quote, the real question isn't who is or isn't a
Aaron,
racist.
Dave and I
It's
were
who's
talking
going to do
about
something about it. Senator, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to hit that point because we
Just
know
have fun
Donald
when
Trump's a
that's it.
racist, but there is
from
no
Irish, you know.
bound of courage for calling him that. When racism exists, the question isn't who isn't a racist, it's who is and isn't doing something about racism. And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy. We have systemic racism that is eroding our nation from healthcare to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850.
I wish I could read
We
it, but
have
now
to
I
come
can't.
at this issue attacking systemic racism,
That's
having the
a
courage
fair
to
point.
call it out,
That's a fair
and having
point.
a plan to do something about it. If I am
More
president
slaves
of the
in
United
prison,
States,
more African
we will
Americans
create
in
an
prison today
office in
than
the White House
slaves in
to deal with
1850.
the problem
Wow.
of white
Yeah.
supremacy and hate crimes.
That is
And we
crazy.
will make
We just
sure
changed
that
the location.
systemic racism is dealt with in substantive
Right.
plans, from criminal justice reform
Terrible.
to the disparities in healthcare to even one that we don't talk about enough.
At least they're not
which
down
is
here.
the racism that we see in environmental injustice in communities of color all around
Good
this country.
stumping or not?
Miguel, I won't say I've
You've been
never
struggling
seen
with
racism.
issues around race
I've even
in
seen
your
it here
own
in Korea.
community.
These people are
You've
racist
also
as
said
hell.
that anyone who votes to
Jesus.
re-elect
But,
President Trump is at best
a lot of
looking
old
the
guys
other
in the
way
shop.
on racism.
It's not like
Does
it
that sort of
doesn't
talk
exist.
alienate voters and potentially deepen divisions in our country?
I believe what's deepened divisions in the country is the conduct of this president, and we have a chance to change all of that. Look, systemic racism preceded this president, and even when we defeat him, it will be with us. That's why we need a systemic approach to dismantle it. It's not enough to just take a racist policy, replace it with a neutral one, and expect things will just get better on their own. Harms compound. In the same way that a dollar saved compound, so does a dollar stolen. And we know that the generational
Wait, we talking
theft
about taxes
of the
then?
descendants of slaves is part of why
No,
everything
we're
from housing
talking about
to education to health to
not
employment
neutral
basically
legislation,
puts us in two
but
different
proactive
I have
legislation.
proposed the most comprehensive
Preferential
vision
legislation.
to tackle systemic racism in every one of these areas, marshaling as many resources as went into the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe, but this time a Douglas Plan that we invest right here at home, to make sure that we're not only dealing with things like the over-incarceration of black Americans, but also black solutions, entrepreneurship, raising
I
to
noticed we had that one
25% the
video game
target
nerd here.
for the federal government to do business with minority-owned businesses, investing in HBCUs that are training and educating the next generation of entrepreneurs. We can and must do that, but that means transcending
Miguel, I'm a
this
fucking
framework
libertarian.
that pits
As
us
far as I'm
against each other,
concerned,
that
you can
pits
do all
a
of those
single
things.
black mother
But
of three
I'm
against a
just not going to
displaced
sit
auto
here
worker,
and
'cause
lie
when I
and say
come
that
where
I've
I come
never
from,
seen
a lot of
racism
times that
before.
displaced
I
auto
mean,
worker is a
no,
single
I've
black
never
mother
been in a
of three.
business
We've gotta
that
say
they
that and
denied a
bring
black
people
person an application
Also,
because it was
concern
black.
for people of
Sure, you
color
got me.
is
But
criminal justice
I'm also
reform.
not going to say
Senator
that
Harris,
I didn't
you
grow
released
up
your plan
15
for
minutes
that
from the
just this
leader of the
week,
Ku
and
Klux
it
Klan
does
in my
contradict
region.
some of your prior
So,
positions. Among them, you used to oppose the legalization of marijuana, now you don't. You used to oppose outside investigations of police shootings, now you don't. You've said that you changed on these and other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to affect change then?
see, this is extremely fair criticism of Kamala.
There have been.
Yeah,
I'm
she
glad
was
you
in the
asked me this
position.
question, and there have been
Oh,
many
she's glad.
distortions of my record. Let me be very clear.
It's not a distortion.
I made
You liar.
a decision
Don't
to
lie.
become a prosecutor
Yeah.
for two reasons. One,
I'm waiting for her to
I've
lie.
always wanted to protect people and keep them safe.
Okay,
And
well,
second,
there's one.
I was born knowing about how this criminal justice system in America has worked in a way that has been informed by racial
Obviously,
bias.
that's two.
And I could tell you extensively about the experiences I and my family members have personally had. But I made a decision that if I was going to have the ability to reform the system, I would try to do it from the inside. And so I took on the position
didn't do that,
allowed me,
surprising.
without asking permission, to create one of the first in the nation initiatives that was a model and became a national model around people who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. I created one of the first in the nation requirements that a state law enforcement agency would have to wear cameras and keep them on full time. I created one of the first in the nation trainings
One
for
of the
police
first.
officer
You were like
on
the
the
10th,
issue of racial
I guess.
bias and the need to reform the system. Was I able to get enough done? Absolutely not. But my plan has been described by activists as being a bold and comprehensive plan that is about ending mass incarceration, about taking the profit out of the criminal justice system. I plan on shutting down for-profit prisons on day one. It will be about what we need to do
That's a tough one.
hold law enforcement, including prosecutors, accountable. And finally, my plan is about making sure that in America's criminal justice system, we de-incarcerate women and children, that we end solitary confinement,
Miss you
and
too,
that we work
Aaron,
on
so
keeping
much.
families intact. And as President of the United States,
All
knowing
of
the
them.
system from the inside, I will have the
Everybody.
ability to
Why
be an
just women and
effective leader
children?
and get this job complete.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Senator Klobuchar,
Did she answer
during
the
your 8
question?
years
Seriously,
as a
like, no, that's a
prosecutor in
fair.
Minnesota,
She said
there
women
were
and
dozens
children.
of
Like,
incidents
literally
where black men
everybody
were killed by
who's in that
police.
situation
Critics
needs to be
say
taken
that
out of that
too often
situation.
you
Not just
sided
women
with
and children.
police in these cases. The ACLU's legal director in Minnesota has said that you showed no interest in racial justice. Do you wish now that you had done more?
It's like, no.
That's not my record. We are here
Is your record?
at a historically black
Klobuchar.
college.
You're
And
the
I
most
think of an alum of
milquetoast
that
person
college,
on
Barbara
this
Jordan,
fucking
and
stage.
something that she once said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want a country as good as its promise. And that same can be said of the criminal justice system. So when I was there, the way we handled these police shootings, I actually took a stand to make sure outside investigators handled them. I took on our major police chief in Minneapolis. But in the prosecutor's office, they were handled with the grand jury.
Amy
That's how they were all
something or other?
handled across our state. I now believe it is
Also,
better
yeah.
for accountability if the prosecutor handles them and makes those decisions herself. That aside, I am proud of the work our staff did, 400 people in our office. The cases that came to us, the African-American community that came to us, they said there was no justice for their little kids. There was a kid named Byron Phillips that was shot on his front porch. No one had bothered to figure out who did it. When I came into that office, we worked with the community groups, we put up billboards, we found the shooter, and we put him in jail. We did the same for the killer of a little girl named
Chelsea,
Taisha
this
Edwards,
one,
who was
Jason,
doing her
sorry.
homework at her
Okay,
kitchen table and
so
was shot through
Shay
the
said
window.
that racism
What
is just an
changes did we
anti-white
make?
slur
Go after
to
white-collar
to
crimes
excuse
in a big
disparities
way.
in outcome between the
Diversify
races.
office in a big way. Work with
I
the Innocence
am
Project to
100%
make
okay
sure
with
we do
saying that
much
there
better with
are
eyewitness
still
ID.
policies in
And as a
effect in
senator
policing
and as
and
your
criminal
president,
justice
I will
that
make sure that we
definitely
don't just do the first step
disproportionately
back
affect
when it
minorities.
comes to
I have no
criminal
issue saying
sentencing, that we move
I
to the
don't have an
second
agenda
step
here.
out, which means
I
the
have no issue
90%
with
of
saying
people that are incarcerated in
like I said,
local
I'm
and
not
state
for
jails.
reparations,
Let's
but I can
reduce
also
those
admit the
sentences
fact
for
that
nonviolent
literally for
offenders, and
decades
let's
we've been
get them
planting
jobs
hard
and let them
drugs
vote
in
when they
minority
get out of
communities so
prison.
that we can
Thank you,
round
Senator
Yeah, that stuff
Klobuchar.
needs fixed.
You all believe that the war
Yeah.
on drugs has put too many Americans behind bars. Vice President
Right here.
Biden,
See,
you
we'll
have a
probably
plan to
agree on
release
whatever
many
they say
nonviolent
here.
drug offenders
Oh,
from
yeah.
Unless they say
prison.
like reparations
Senator
or
Booker
something.
says that your
The only
plan
place
is
we agree
not
with the leftists.
ambitious enough. Your response?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I came back from law school, I had a job with a big-time law firm. I left and became a public defender because my state was under siege and Dr. King was assassinated.
Clearly
We
clever.
were occupied by the National Guard for 10 months. I've been involved from the beginning. As a young congressman, as a young councilman, I introduced legislation to try to keep them putting a sewer plant in a poor neighborhood. I made sure that we dealt with redlining. Banks should have to lend where they operate, et cetera. The fact of the matter is that what's happened is that we're in a situation now where there are so many people who are in jail and shouldn't be in jail. The whole means by which this should
100%
change
agree.
is the whole model has to
100%.
change. We should be talking about rehabilitation. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime.
I think it's Silas.
As when we were in the White House, we released 36,000 people from the federal prison system. Nobody should
Which
be
is
in
not
jail
nearly enough,
for a drug
but-
problem. They should be going directly to a rehabilitation. We build more rehabilitation centers, not prisons. I'm the guy that put in the drug courts to divert people from the criminal justice system. And so we have to change the whole way we look at this. When we put people in prison, we have to equip them when they get out. Nobody who got in prison for marijuana, for example, immediately upon being released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged. Every single right should be returned. When you finish your term in prison, you should be able not only vote, but have access to Pell Grants, have access to be able to get housing, have access to be able to move along the way.
Yeah, that needs to happen. If they do this legislation, it has to be retroactive. All drug-related crimes
Yeah.
have
Senator
to
Booker,
be
45
clean.
seconds to respond.
Change people's fucking
Our
lives.
criminal justice system is
Right?
so savagely broken. There's no difference in America between blacks, whites, and Latinos for using drugs or dealing drugs. But if you're African American, you're almost 4 times more likely to be arrested and incarcerated, destroying your lives.
It's true.
And so much of this comes down to privilege. We have a criminal justice system that Brian Stevenson says treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. And so I have challenged
that
this
part
whole
we do
field.
side together
We can
on.
specifically and demonstrate
I'm like one of the most
show that there are
anti-war people you'll meet.
17,000 people unjustly incarcerated in America, and all of us should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has already led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, but we didn't make it retroactive, we could literally point to the people that are in jail unjustly right now. Everyone on this stage should say that we are going to give clemency to these 17,000 people. And I challenge you, don't just say big statements, back it up with details of the people in prison right now looking for one of the most sacrosanct ideals of this nation, which is liberty and freedom. We need to reform this system, and we must do it now. Every day we wait is too long.
Thank you,
No,
Lindsay.
yeah, I mean,
I want to turn to the deadly
this
mass
is
shootings
decades
here in
late.
this country, and of course, we are all mindful tonight of
Here
where
we
we
go.
stand.
Guns.
We are
Ooh,
here
boy.
in Texas tonight, where 29 people have lost their lives in just the last
Patrick, I'll
month.
do that the
El
second you get out of
Paso,
here.
which we've discussed in Odessa, and I know there are survivors from El Paso right here in the hall tonight. Vice President Biden, I do want to direct this to you because we all remember Sandy Hook. 26 people died in that school, 20 of them children. Those first graders
Ron
would
Paul
be
does
in
not
8th grade
support
today.
Tulsi.
At the
I think
time,
he
there was a
thinks she's
groundswell
like one
in
of
this
the most
country to get
least
something done.
repulsive
President
candidates.
Obama asked you to lead the push for gun control. You have often pointed to your ability to reach across the aisle to get things done. But 4 months after Sandy Hook, a measure to require expanded background checks died on the Senate
I have
floor.
looked it up. I'm very
If you
intimate
couldn't get
with
it
Ron
done after
Paul's
Sandy Hook,
beliefs.
why should voters give you another chance?
Mischaracterization of what he
I've done
said.
before. I'm the only one up here who's ever.
He said
been
one nice
NRA.
thing, and then they
Are you
ran
saying
with it.
you're going to actually head out, Martini?
I'm the guy that brought
I
the
know.
Brady bill into focus and became law. And so that's number one. Number two, after Sandy Hook, a number of things happened. It went from a cause to a movement. Look what's happened now. Mothers, the organization, Mothers Against Violence, what gun violence. We've seen what's happened again. Now
They're
we
okay
have
with
all
violence.
these young
It's just the
people
gun violence they don't
marching
like.
on Washington, making sure that things are going to change. There has been a sea change. Those proposals I put forward
Pretty
for
much,
the
Miguel.
president had over 50% of members of the NRA supporting them, and overwhelmingly the rest of the people supporting them. Now the numbers are much higher because they realize what I've been saying, and we've all been saying, is correct. Over 90% of the American people think we have to get assault weapons off the street, period. And we have to get buybacks and get them out of their basements. So the point is, things have changed, and things have
It's a lot of
changed
money,
a
Joe.
lot. And now what's happening is, and by the way, the way Beto handled, excuse me for saying Beto, what Congressman...
That's all right. Beto's good.
The way he handled
Please, no.
what happened in his hometown is meaningful. To look in the eyes of those people, to see those kids, to understand those parents, you understand the heartache.
But this is
we
the
are
problem.
ready to do this.
Mr. Vice President,
This is the
thank you.
problem.
You did bring up assault weapons here. You did bring up assault weapons here, and many of you on this stage have talked about executive orders. Senator Harris, you have said that you would take executive action on guns within your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault
Bring it.
weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more than 23 executive actions, and yet here we all are today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the Vice President have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the Senator answer.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
That's
No, that's
really
not how
drunk.
executive authority works. That's not how the
Yes,
Constitution
we can,
works.
Because I'll tell you something.
Oh, that doesn't
The
work.
way that I think about this.
Are you kidding
is,
me?
I've seen more autopsy photographs.
Does everybody
than I care
not
to tell you.
understand why what she said is a problem?
I have attended more police officer funerals than I care to tell you. I have hugged
none of
more
that
mothers
matters.
of homicide victims than I care
No,
to tell
this
you.
is a logos versus ethos
And
thing. This is not
the
how this
idea
works.
That we would wait for this Congress,
understand,
which
Martini.
has just
We love you.
done nothing to act.
is just it is overlooking the fact that every day in
I
America,
do not
our
care who
babies
you
are
are.
going to school to
I
have
don't care.
drills,
All right, you know what?
middle, and high school
Shut up.
students.
I don't care who you
Where
are
they
out
are
in
learning
this chat.
about how they
If
have to
the idea
hide
of the
in a
president
closet or
exi-
crouch in a
just
corner if
totally
there is
saying
a
screw the
mass
Constitution
shooter
and start putting
roaming the hallways
executive
of their
orders
school.
out
I
that
was
are that
talking about this at
powerful
one of my town
is
halls,
insane.
and
That
this
is insane.
child, it was 8
When
years
Trump
old,
does it, it's
Robert,
insane.
came up
When
to me,
she
was like
does it,
was
it's
a secret
insane.
between the two of
It
us,
has to
and
stop.
he tugged on my
Okay,
jacket and he
back to
said,
the debate.
I had to have one of those drills. It is traumatizing our children. El Paso and Beto, God love you for standing so courageously in the midst of that tragedy. You know, people asked me in El Paso, they said, you know, because I have a long-standing record on this issue, they said, well, do you think Trump is responsible for what happened? And I said, well, look, I mean, obviously he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, do you still stand by what you said on an executive
what
order?
I said was, the question, speak to constitutional scholars. If, in fact, we could say, by the way...
He's not wrong.
you
I
can't
hate
own
Joe
the
Biden.
following weapons.
He's the most corrupt person on this
Can't be sold
stage.
anymore.
He's a creepy, basically
Check with
pedophile
constitutional
man.
scholars. Now,
Mr.
you
Vice
can-
President, thank you.
Could I tell you
Congressman
what you
O'Rourke, I
could
want to
do
come
right.
to you on
100
this.
days?
Maybe
I
reptilian.
work down the road here, but I do want to come to Congressman O'Rourke because I know this is personal to you. El Paso is your hometown. Some on this stage have suggested a voluntary buyback for guns in this country. You've gone further. You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and
bad ideas, it's the
AK-47s
most
will
ethical.
have to sell them to the government, all of them. You know the critics call this
have
confiscation.
to.
Are you proposing...
Big igloo time.
He looks
I
bright-eyed, I
am.
tell
If it's
you.
a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield,
Designed to kill people. Let's just
If-
took all of them then.
a high impact,
Pretty
high velocity
broad.
round, when it hits your body, shreds everything inside of your body because it was designed to do that.
He said it has
so
to
that
be
you would
designed to
bleed
be done
death
on a battlefield. So that
not be
means
able to get
that
up
black powder
and kill one of
rifles
our
have to be
soldiers.
turned into the
When
government.
we see that being used
They shred.
against children, and in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against...
I'm allowed to do this.
One of these guys.
What the heck did I just do?
I want to say this. I'm listening to the people of this country. The day after I proposed doing that, I went to a gun show in Conway, Arkansas, to meet with those who are selling AR-15s and AK-47s and those who are buying those weapons. And you might
I
be
shred.
surprised
Are you going to
there
buy
was some
me back,
common ground there.
Robert?
Folks who said, I would willingly give that up, cut it to pieces. I don't need this weapon to hunt, to defend myself. It is a weapon of war. So let's do the right thing, but let's bring
Gotta be ready for
everyone
war.
in America into the conversation. Republicans, Democrats,
Then I need
gun
to defend
owners, and
myself in
non-gun
war?
owners alike.
Congressman,
If there
thank you.
was war
I want to bring in Senator
here,
Klobuchar.
right on
No, there's
front
going to be
lawns.
no war.
Because you often
The police will
talked
take care
about
of
your
it.
uncle.
You want to talk about nonviolent criminals,
So I wanted to
man.
get your response to Congressman O'Rourke
Start raiding
tonight.
gun owners'
Where do you
houses.
stand on mandatory gun buybacks?
It is.
I
It's hard,
so
Jason.
appreciate
I know. I'm
what
sorry.
the congressman's been doing, and I want to remind people here that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us.
That's very true.
Everyone
You
up
don't
here
use an
favors
AR-15
an
gun.
assault
You
weapon
can
ban.
if you want.
Everyone
You
up
use it
here
for freedom.
favors magazine limitations, which, by the way, would have made a huge difference if that was in place in El Paso in that store where all those
How
ordinary
long it
people
takes to
showed
change a
such
magazine?
extraordinary courage. And certainly in Dayton, Ohio, where in 30 seconds,
took me
one
3
man
seconds.
guns down
Oops.
innocent people. The cops got there in 1 minute, and it still wasn't enough to save those people. That's what unites us. You know what else unites us? And I'll
She
tell you
barely
this,
made the
what
requirement.
unites
That's
us
why she's here.
Is that right now on Mitch McConnell's desk?
She's another one of the
are
ones I
3
don't really
bills.
care about, to be honest
Universal
with you.
background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, and passing my bill to make sure that
She's like
domestic abusers
more
don't
milquetoast
get
than Hillary.
AK-47.
Did
At
anybody
least
else
Hillary said spicy things.
And I personally think we should
She's
start
also
with the
apparently like the
voluntary-
worst
I don't
person in the
watch the
world to
news.
work
voluntary
with.
It's hard
buyback
for me to-
program. That's what I think, David. But I want to
can't
finish
handle
this
it.
because if you want action now, we got to send a message to Mitch McConnell. We can't wait until one of us gets in the White House. We have to pass those bills right now to get this done.
Senator, you'll never get it through the Senate. Stop lying to your voter base.
Thank you. I want to turn to Senator Booker because you have said just this week about guns and about the candidates on this stage that the differences do matter. Those were your words. You have argued if you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license to buy a gun. Gun owners would not only have to pass a background check, they would have to obtain a federal license to buy a gun. This would require, as you know, Congress to pass legislation. If Democrats can't get
so much anger.
Checks, how would you get?
No, I'm just angry about what this guy's saying.
A Republican colleague of yours in the Senate right
gosh.
now who would be on board with this idea.
So background checks and gun licensing, these are agreed to by overwhelmingly the majority of Americans. 83% of Americans agree with licensing. This is the issue. Look, I grew up in the suburbs. It was about 20 years ago that I came out of my home when I moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey, and witnessed the aftermath of a shooting. It's one of the reasons why shooting after shooting after shooting in neighborhoods like mine for decades, this has been a crisis for me. It's why I was the first person to come out for gun licensing. And I'm happy that people like Beto O'Rourke are showing such courage now and coming forward and also now supporting licensing. I know. But this is what I'm sorry about. I'm sorry that it had to take issues coming to my neighborhood or personally affecting Beto to suddenly make us demand change.
A license to protect myself. I'm
Crisis
so
of
angry.
empathy in our nation. We are never going to solve this crisis if we have to wait for it to personally affect
Sounds
us
like Australia,
or our neighborhood,
like
our
Kane
community
talks
before
about.
we demand action. You want to know how we get this done? We get this done by having a more courageous empathy where people don't wait for this hell to visit upon their communities. They stand up and understand.
Literally
the truth of what
asking
King
for
said, that
reactionary
injustice
policy.
anywhere is a threat
That is
to
such a
justice
bad way of
everywhere.
fixing
But I will
problems.
lead change
They end up
on this
taking away our
issue
vapes.
because I have seen what the carnage creates in communities like mine because we forget
Long day.
national shootings. These mass shootings are tragedies, but the majority of the homicide victims come from neighborhoods like mine. Nobody has ascended to the White House that
With
will bring more
handguns.
personal passion
The
on this
overwhelming
issue.
majority of
I will
firearm
fight
deaths
this
are
and bring a
suicides.
fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they have never seen before.
Senator Booker, thank you. A quick follow-up, though, because Americans watching tonight know the reality of Congress in Washington. I asked, do you have a Republican colleague in the Senate who would be on board with this idea to get this done?
You know, if that was the attitude when Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster ever on civil rights,
Here
was
we
this idea that
go.
we can't get it done because of the situation in the Senate.
I
I'm looking
can't
to
tell
lead
you an
a
answer
movement.
because
The
I'm not
number one
good at
reason why
lying, so
governments
I'll
are
just not
failed
answer
is to
it.
protect the citizenry. Think about this. We have had
Sci-Fi
more
Channel
people
playlist
die
likes Joe Biden.
due to gun violence in my
Just say
lifetime
no.
than every
Say no, Booker.
single
Make that a
war
talking
in this
point.
country
People are
combined from the
yelling.
You have
Revolutionary
to
War
walk
till now.
around it.
This is not a
Say
side
no.
issue to me.
Say that's
It
why
is
we
a
have to win the
central
Senate.
issue to me.
Say that's
That
why
is
it's
the kind
important
of
for you to
fight
get on
because
your
the majority of
primaries.
homicide victims have a
Idiot.
mass shooting every single day in communities like mine. We must awaken a more courageous empathy in this country so that we stand together and fight together
hands are
and
going up.
overwhelm those Republicans who are not even representing their constituency.
Bernie hasn't
Because
talked
the
in a while.
majority
He's
of
gonna need a
Americans,
cough
the majority of gun
Yeah.
owners agree
You're
with
not
me,
talking.
not the corporate
Throat's
gun
locking
lobby.
up right
It is
now.
time for a movement on this issue, and I will lead it.
Senator Booker, thank you. Senator Warren, I want to come to you next because you have actually said in recent days that there are things you can get done with Republicans in the Senate. What can you get done on gun control?
So let's start by
Not a
framing
damn
the problem
thing.
the right way. We have a gun violence problem in this country. The mass shootings are terrible, but they get all the headlines. Children die every day on streets, in neighborhoods, on playgrounds. People die from violence, from suicide and domestic abuse. We have a
Is
gun
suicide
violence
violence?
problem in this country, and we agree
Depends on what
many
side you're on.
steps we could take to
That's
fix
a
it.
big leap.
My view on this is it's not going to be one and done on this. We're going to do it,
I
and
need
we're going to
another
have to
beer.
do it again, and we're going to have to come back some more until we cut the number of gun deaths in this country significantly. But here's the deal. The question we need to
Yeah, they
ask
keep going.
is when we've got this much support across the country,
Prosecutors
90% of Americans want to see us do, I like registration, want to see us do background checks, want to get
I like
assault weapons
registration.
off
That's what you
the
say on your
streets.
first date.
Why doesn't it happen? And the answer
Yes, Juan,
is
you need a stronger
It's on her
drink.
Tinder
This is-
profile.
pure and simple. We have a Congress that is beholden to the gun industry. And unless we're willing to address that
Aaron, we
head
love
on
you.
and roll back the filibuster, we're not going to get anything done on
that's
guns.
the only way we're getting
I
through
was
this.
in the United States Senate when 54 senators said, let's do background checks, let's get rid
A little
of
early
assault
for you.
weapons. And with
Yeah, a little bit.
54 senators, it failed because of the filibuster. Until we attack the systemic problems, we can't
That's what I say,
get
Aaron.
gun
Aaron
reform
said his
in this
suicide was
country.
peaceful as fuck.
We've got to go straight against the industry, and we've got to
So it
change
depends on what
Congress
side you're
so
on.
it doesn't just work for the wealthy and well-connected, so it works for the people.
Senator Warren, thank you.
Does anybody know if she still wants to hold gun manufacturers accountable?
A simple majority
Oh,
in
wow.
the Senate to get
Was that a
something
thing?
done. I want to turn to
Yeah,
Senator
it was-
Sanders on this
I don't know if
because
she
you've said
still says
before
that or
of
not.
this. If Donald
Wow.
Trump supports ending the filibuster,
Somebody in
which
chat
he's
would
talked
know.
about himself,
Clearly clever. You should
be
follow our
nervous.
channel. That's what we're
Do you
here for.
support ending the filibuster?
No, but what I would support.
He said those two on the bottom right look like they know how to party.
legislation. The gun
My name's Mary,
legislation
and I
that
like to
people here are
party.
talking about. Medicare for all.
These are
Climate
two different
change
channels here.
legislation That saves the planet.
I'm going to talk
I
over
will
him.
not wait for 60 votes to make
Christians
that
on
happen.
Liberty
And
After
you can do
Dark,
it in a variety of
more
ways.
intellectual
You
stuff.
can do that through budget reconciliation law.
And we're dual
you have
streaming.
a vice president who will, in fact, tell the Senate what is appropriate and what is not, what is in order and what is not. But I want to get back to a point that Elizabeth made.
It's
And
getting
that,
worse.
In terms of gun issues,
Does he have a
picking
cold?
up on Corey and Beto and everybody else.
Or is my
What we
internet
are
breaking up?
looking
Is
at
that what he sounds
is
like?
a corrupt
More
political
More purples in his
and
throat.
that means whether it is the drug companies or the insurance companies or the fossil fuel industry determining what's happening in Washington, or
Clearly.
in this case, you got an NRA
Hold on one
which has
second.
intimidated the President of the United States and the Republican leadership. I am proud. I am proud
definitely
that
got
year
some jank
after
going
year,
on today.
I had an F rating.
Can't he just
the NRA.
do
And as
that?
Yeah, just give me one. It would feel better if he tried. If he just gave me a
It
little
would get
cough.
worse, yes.
The open ethics are how we
Clearly,
build
we're
our laws.
Liberty Late Night, and
Morality
Christian
and
is Liberty After Dark.
A lot about what's been happening here in Texas.
Cheers, Tony.
Only a few weeks ago, the deadliest massacre of Latinos in modern U.S. history happened in this state, in El Paso. So the fear among
Yeah,
Latinos
it should
is
show
very
up
real.
if he
So
actually
let me start with an
subscribes to
issue
our
that
channel.
is
we'll do
causing
it.
a lot of division
Slavery was also unethical.
in this country.
Which is why
Immigration.
it changing is
Vice President Biden, as a presidential candidate
ethics are hard.
in 2008, you
not
supported the
flexible.
border wall, saying, unlike most Democrats, I voted for 700 miles of
Sorry,
fence.
Jason.
Thanks,
This is
Jason.
what you
Or
said.
actually,
Then you served as vice president in an administration that deported 3 million people, the most
That's
ever
true,
in
okay.
U.S.
I'm
history.
sure we have plenty of moral
Did you do
disagreements.
anything to
And I
prevent
wouldn't
those
call you
deportations?
dumb,
I mean, you've
so
been asked
unless
this
you're trying to
question
call me
before and
dumb.
you refused to answer, so let me try once
Can
again.
you do Spanglish?
Are you prepared to say tonight
Oh.
that you and President Obama made a mistake about deportations? Why should Latinos trust you?
What Latinos should look at is comparing this president to the president we have is outrageous, number one. We didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families. We didn't do all of those things, number one. Number two, by the time, this is the president who came along with the DACA program.
Hey,
no one had ever
thanks,
done that
Jason.
before. This is the president sent legislation to the desk saying he wants to find a pathway for the 11 million undocumented in the United States of America. This is the president who's done a great deal. So I'm proud to have served with him.
I wonder if Jason's embarrassed that he wasn't
is
already
several more
subscribed to our
things,
channel.
because things have
fine.
changed.
Not
I would,
everybody
in
is
fact,
yet.
make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard.
Hi,
That's who we
Shillelagh.
are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and
Can we
you're fleeing oppression, you should come. I would change the order that the president just changed, saying women
get the
who
juice.
were being beaten and abused could no
Sure, if you want to,
longer
real quick.
claim that as a
Anything else?
reason for asylum. And by the way, retrospectively, you know, the 25th
BRB.
anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act is up.
Jason's got
The
one.
Republican Congress has not reauthorized it. Let's put pressure on them to pass the Violence Against Women Act now. But then
Yeah,
go
but
back.
you didn't answer the question.
Well,
The question
I
is,
did
did
answer
you
the
make
question.
did you make a mistake with those deportations?
The president did the best thing that was able to be done at the
How about
time.
you?
I'm the vice president of the United States.
Secretary Castro, would you want to respond to Vice President Biden?
You know,
and let me put this in context.
What's crazy
because,
is someone made the comment that so Obama's a Republican now. Compared to these guys, Obama's a conservative Democrat. Think about that for a second. That's how far the Overton window is.
Democrats now.
Wow.
I mean, now it is even more difficult, as you know, because you need Republican votes in the Senate. So are you willing, for instance, to give up DACA? Or give up a path to citizenship, or even agree to build a wall in order to legalize 10.5 million undocumented immigrants.
So, Opeth, just real quick, it may be moral in some places to beat your wife, but in no school of thought is it ethical to beat your wife.
Has a dark
Except for
heart
maybe
when
like
it comes to
fucking
immigrants.
nihilism.
He built his whole political career so
got
far
so
on
many holes, it's not
scapegoating
even
and
known.
fear-mongering and otherizing migrants, and that's very different for Barack Obama.
It's David negotiating
But my
race.
problem with Vice President Biden, and Corey pointed this out last time, is every time something good about Barack Obama comes up, he says, oh, I was there, that's me too. And then every time somebody questions part of the administration that we were both part of, he says, well, that was the president. I mean, he wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer any questions.
Vice President Biden, you have 45 seconds.
Let me just say,
Pee in the sink, Aaron.
let me just say that I was the first candidate in early April to put forward an immigration plan. You know why? Because I'm not afraid of Donald Trump on this issue. I'm not going to backpedal. I'm not going to pretend like I don't have my own vision for immigration. So we're not going to give up DACA. We're not going to give up protections for anybody.
He's going to say keep the dreamers and don't build the wall and release it. Now we know what
That's edgy.
I was saying earlier, you guys were having a conversation about morals in the chat. I just wanted to say that that's the reason why we base laws on ethics, or are supposed to base laws on ethics, because ethics are based off of schools of thought and require consistency of application. There's no ethical theory of how to treat human beings that allows you to beat your wife without you then also being able to be beaten by her. So,
and recently in Mississippi, we saw the largest immigration rate in a decade. You want to replace ICE, the agency.
Use the same thumbnail as me.
Undocumented immigrants. So how would you deal with the millions of immigrants who arrive legally but overstay their visas? And how would you stop hundreds of thousands of Central Americans who want to migrate to the U.S.?
Well, I start with a statement of principles, and that is, in this country, immigration does not make us weaker, immigration makes us stronger. I want to see us expand legal immigration and create a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, but also for their grandparents and for their cousins, for people who's overstayed student visas, and for people who came here to work in the fields. I want to have a system that is a path to citizenship that is fair and achievable. Down at the border, we've got to rework this entirely. A system right now that cannot tell the difference in the threat posed by a terrorist, a criminal, and a 12-year-old girl is not a system that is keeping us safer, and it is not serving our values.
Mr. Yang,
I have not read Rush Limbaugh's plan on
immigration. On
immigration.
this, because I think we have to look at all the pieces. Why do we have a crisis at the border? In no small part because we have withdrawn help from people in Central America who are suffering. We need to restore that help. We need to help establish and reestablish the rule of law so that people don't feel like they have to flee for their lives. We have a crisis that Donald Trump has created and hopes to profit from politically. We have to have the courage to stand up and fight back.
Mr. Yang, it is true that in the last few years we have seen the most severe anti-immigrant measures, from putting kids in cages to limiting asylum for people fleeing gangs and domestic violence. But it is also true that about 1 million immigrants enter the U.S. legally every year. So are you willing to raise the number of legal immigrants from 1 million to 2 million per year? And should there be a merit system, as President Trump wants?
So, yeah, I'm sorry, did you ask me or?
Mr. Yang.
Already said it, okay. Sorry.
My father grew up on a peanut farm in Asia with no floor, and now his son is running for president. That is the immigration story that we have to be able to share with you.
What?
He's Asian. He told us before, but for anyone who missed it.
If you look at our history, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by either immigrants or children of immigrants. and rates of business formation are much higher in
It should be
immigrant
even better,
communities.
'cause they
We
got
have to say to the American people, immigrants are
such
positive
gain.
for our economic and social dynamism.
They
and I
can
would
be.
return the level of legal
Immigrants
immigration
100% can be
to the
economic
point it was
positives.
under the Obama-Biden administration. I think we have to compete for talent, and I am the opposite of Donald Trump in many ways. He says build a wall. I'm going to say to immigrants, come to America, because if you come here, your son or daughter
Apparently.
can run for
forgot that's a
president.
screen
The
thing.
water is
It's
great.
okay. I can not
This
read
is where
those.
you
It's
want to
all right.
build a company,
Can't
build
put
a
it there.
family, and build a life. This country has been a magnet for human capital for generations.
There we go.
If we lose that, we lose something integral to our continued success, and that is where I would lead as president.
Alcalde Pitt, tengo una pregunta para usted.
Gracias.
Alcalde Pitt, 8 out of 10 Latinos in Texas for another mass shooting targeting them. This is
He
according
called
to a
doing
new
Spanish,
Univision
didn't
poll. President Trump has called Mexican
Who's
immigrants
Yen going to
rapists
choose
and
us as
killers,
Yen?
tried to ban Muslims from entering the country, and separated children from their parents. His supporters have chanted, build a wall and send her back. Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism. Shit. Racismo es sencillo.
It's okay, don't worry about it.
The only people, though, who actually buy into this president's hateful rhetoric around immigrants are people who don't know it.
Irish, me too.
We have an opportunity to build an American majority around immigration reform. In my community, a group of
thought you said sexually
conservative
attracted
Republicans
men.
rallied around an
That's what we were
individual, a
talking about.
beloved
No, I was
local
talking to
individual who
Donnie.
was deported
Irish too,
when he went
yeah.
into ICE to try to get his
You're Irish
paperwork
and
sorted
sexually
out. Because they
attracted
never
men.
thought it would happen to him. In some of the most conservative rural areas of Iowa, I have seen communities that embraced immigration grow. And it's why part of my plan for revitalizing the economies of rural America includes community renewal visas that would allow cities and towns and counties that are hurting not only for jobs but for population to embrace immigration as we have in my city. You know, the only reason that South Bend is growing right now, after
Localized
years of shrinking,
immigration.
is immigration. It's one of the reasons we acted, not waiting for Washington, to create city-issued
an interesting
municipal
idea.
IDs so that people, regardless of immigration status, in our city had the opportunity to have the benefits of identification. We have an opportunity to actually get something done, but we cannot allow this to continue to be the same debate, the same arguments, and the same clever lines, often among the same people, since the last real reform happened in the 1980s. We have to actually engage the American majority around the opportunities for not just growth in small communities, but our values, values of welcome, values of faith that all argue for us to manage this humanely and in a way that marries our values with our laws.
Congresista Beto O'Rourke, una pregunta para usted. In an interview 8 months ago, you were asked what to do with the so-called overstayers, people who come with a visa and then stay. And you said, I don't know. Do you have an answer now?
I do, and if you read the rest of that article in the Washington Post, I talked about harmonizing our entry-exit system with Mexico in the same way that we do with Canada. I think that could help us to keep a handle on visa overstays, but I think the larger question that we're trying to get at is how do we rewrite this country's immigration laws in our own image, in the image of Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the United States of America.
It's not supposed to matter.
In the image of El Paso,
Houston,
Texas, one of the
H-Town.
safest cities in the United States of America. Safe, not despite the
better.
fact that we are a city of immigrants, safe because we are a city of immigrants. Conocemos que si queremos hacer
here we go.
nuestras comunidades y nuestro país, necesitamos tratar cada persona con respeto y dignidad. I will lead an effort to make sure that we
gonna
rewrite
guess.
our
I
immigration
haven't been
laws
keeping up
in
with our
that way.
drink
Never
count.
cage another child. Make sure that there is accountability and justice for the 7
Someone's
lives
been on
lost under
Duolingo.
our care and our custody, but also face the fact that Democrats and Republicans alike voted to build a wall that has produced thousands
last name,
of
I have
deaths
it written
of
down.
people trying
Pete.
to cross to join family
I don't
or
know
to
which
lose a
one.
job.
Wait.
That we have been part of deporting
Yes,
people,
okay, yeah.
hundreds of thousands just in the Obama administration alone who pose no threat to this country, breaking up their families. Democrats have to get off the back foot. We have to lead on this issue because we know it is right. Legalize America. Begin with those more than 1 million dreamers. Make them U.S. citizens right now in their true home country, and extend that to their parents, their sisters, and their brothers, and ensure that we have
Say a
a
swear
legal,
word.
safe, orderly system
Say
to
a
come to this country
swear word
and
in
add to our benefits
Spanish.
here.
Jorge, thank you. We're going to
some
take a quick
Spanish
break.
on
When
it.
we come back, national security foreign
Oh my gosh, a
policy,
break. I have to
impact
pee,
on American
guys.
jobs and U.S. troops.
Wow.
Holy shit, they went the whole hour and a half. And there's another hour and a half.
Another hour and a half.
Oh my gosh.
We're halfway there, guys.
Halfway there, everybody.
Well, I think.
And now, right after the debate wraps, the candidates...
Also, props to Christian, who woke up on the other side of the world today and is watching this to start his day.
Yeah.
This is starting
this is
his day.
Morning. At least we get to get drunk and go to sleep
Yeah.
and forget all this ever happened.
He has to be awake for the rest of the day now.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure I'll be doing a recap after this whole thing is over.
Great.
Yeah, we haven't been paying enough
Because
attention
we need your recap, Christian.
We get distracted easily.
Yeah. Just
I mean, it's really easy for me to sit here and and listen to what they're saying and then say like, well, that's wrong and this is right. And this person, why am I agreeing with this person? Why is he right? Why is he the one on stage that's right? Like I said that with Joe like 3 times.
Yeah.
Joe would say something to the effect of like, this is going to cost way more money than your plan allows for increase in revenue. And I'm like, well, your plan sucks too, Joe, but you're right.
You did
It's
the
like,
math, but yours isn't any better.
Yeah. I can say I disagree with you, but it's just not intellectually honest to say he's wrong. He's not wrong. He's right. And it's also just fair to say that an opt-in system is more ethical than any system that is either non-voluntary or eliminates private insurance or both.
Yep.
Those things are inherently less ethical because they remove consumer choice.
Right.
And there's a difference. Some people say, okay, well, there's an opt-out, right? You're automatically in. It's an opt-out, right? Then that just means that you've already been put into the system without your consent to begin with.
Right.
And if we aren't even getting people's consent on fundamental things such as their health care, is body sovereignty still a thing? Is this a value that we actually uphold still? I don't know. I mean, so we can look at this from either a consequentialist perspective of how we can just do this for the sake of it, or we can look at it from an ethical perspective and ask what we care about and why.
Yeah.
I think they're about to come back. I'm going to turn this debate off.
No, they can't be. They have to be. Oh,
No,
they're
they're
just going to
still
talk.
talking.
These people.
I got my sponsor slideshow
Like they
going.
cannot pee that fast because they are old. They need to use the restroom. And I've been drinking, so do I.
If you're doing
But
that, you
no,
better do that.
I will do it. But I want to say that if we're gonna be forced into this whole healthcare thing, I'd rather have an opt-in than an opt-out.
Which would be nice if you don't have the option of your own healthcare, and it's like, okay, here we go. Oh,
yeah.
If the system, like I said, if the system has to exist,
if
the system has to exist, we'll pretend, or we'll craft a scenario where it's like we have no choice, whatever. That's fine. We'll do that for the thought experiment. I would rather have an opt-in system than either, especially over one that I have no other choice.
Yes.
If your only choice is, like, even Great Britain, even the UK, even Canada have supplemental health insurance. There's a reason why they have supplemental health insurance. Because government insurance doesn't cover everything as well as some people would like.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's foolish to sit here and suggest that we should just pretend like we can do it better. Like, we keep saying we need to keep up with the rest of the first world, the Western countries, and do this socialized healthcare. Okay, cool, that's fine. Let's not pretend like we're going to be so much fucking better at this than they are. Especially when we have, in some cases, 10, 20 times the number of people in our country. That makes the system 10, 20 times more complicated.
Right.
That's why our veterans care is so garbage compared to other countries' veterans care. They're dealing with, maybe a few 100,000 veterans from their militaries, right? Maybe upwards of 1 million or so in some countries that have large militaries. But whenever you start looking at the U.S., where we have millions upon millions upon millions of veterans who qualify for veteran services, then there we go.
Nice.
Don't compare our capabilities to a country that makes less than Disney. But I'm also comparing our capabilities to a country that's a 300th the population. Of course we make more than Disney. Of course we make more than Disney. I'm not comparing it to TRICARE. I'm comparing it to VA services. That's not TRICARE. That is the third independent healthcare or government-sponsored healthcare option that we have. Medicare, Medicaid, sure. TRICARE, if you count that, that's all military hospitalities and doctors. It's not available to the public unless you're directly connected to them. But then you have the VA health services. And the VA health services are garbage. People aren't lighting themselves on fire in VA waiting rooms because they get amazing health care. So that's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not trying to like start a fight. I just want to make it very clear that we have problems, and I'm extremely skeptical if anything that's being proposed would actually fix them. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable at all to say that. So there we go. I mean, that's really all I wanted to say. That's really all I wanted to say.
Yeah, they're getting all their commercials in at once here, aren't they?
They are. Well, I mean, they were only doing 2 breaks, so.
Wow. Looks like, are we coming back? Are we really coming back?
We might be. Yep. Okay, we're back.
Trump's tariffs. We received more than 100 questions from viewers wanting to know how all of you are going to handle these tariffs. And Mr. Yang, let me begin with you.
Tariffs.
Would
This
you
is good.
repeal the tariffs on your first day in office? And if so,
say yes.
Would you risk losing leverage in our trade relationship with China?
Say yes.
I would not repeal the tariffs on day one, but I would let the Chinese know that we need to hammer out a deal. Because right now, the tariffs are pummeling producers and farmers in Iowa who have absolutely nothing to do with the imbalances that we have with China. A CEO friend of mine was in China recently, and he said that he saw pirated U.S. intellectual property on worker workstations to the tune of thousands of dollars per head. And he said, one, how can my workers compete against that? And two, think about all the lost revenue to American companies. So the imbalances are real, but we have to let the Chinese know that we recognize that President Trump has pursued an arbitrary and haphazard trade policy that has had victims on both sides.
There's a lot of truth to that.
So no
Carolina.
to repealing the tariffs immediately, but yes to making sure we come to a deal that addresses the concerns of American companies and American producers.
Mayor Pete, let me take that question. Let me take that question to you, because if you've seen President Trump's tweets, he says what's going to happen here is the Chinese are just going to wait him out so they can get a Democrat who they can take advantage of. How do you think about China? We've seen President Trump call President Xi both an enemy and a friend.
Well, the president clearly has no strategy. You know, when I first got into this race, I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping. Is it just me, or was that supposed to happen in, like, April? It's one more example of a commitment not made. When that happens on the international stage, people take note. Not just our competitors, our adversaries, but also our allies take note of the inability of the United States to keep its word or follow through on its plans. And when that happens, there are serious consequences. We saw it at the G7, the leaders of some of the greatest powers and economies of the world, sitting to talk about one of the greatest challenges in the world, climate change. And there was literally an empty chair where American leadership could have been. The problem is, this is a moment when American leadership is needed more than ever. Whether it's in Hong Kong, where those protesters for democracy need to know that they have a friend in the United States, or anywhere around the world where increasingly we see dictators throwing their weight around. The world needs America, but it can't be just any America.
Would you repeal the tariffs?
I would have a strategy that would include the tariffs as leverage, but it's not about the tariffs. Look, what's going on right now is a president who has reduced entire China challenge into a question of tariffs, when what we know is that the tariffs are coming down on us more than anybody else, and there's a lack of a bigger strategy.
Senator Klobuchar, you've actually supported the tariffs on steel.
What we've got right now, though, George, it's not a focused tariff on steel. What he has done here, he has assessed these tariffs on our allies. He has put us in the middle of this trade war, and he is treating our farmers and our workers like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And if we are not careful, he is going to bankrupt this country. One forecast recently says that it has already cost us 300,000 jobs. All right? There is soybeans
over
that
half
are mounting up in bins all over the Midwest,
over
in my
half
state of Minnesota,
of that money that we've
and in Iowa.
spent
So what I
on
think
these
we need to
tariffs
do
is on
to go
aluminum
back
and
to the
steel.
negotiating table.
So
That's what I
she's
would do.
she's
I wouldn't
so
have put all
for
these
the
tariffs
steel
in place,
tariffs. In
and I
fact, she
wouldn't
wants
have
to
had a trade
increase
policy
percentages on
where
steel
on
because
August
she
1st
thinks
he
we'll really
announces he's going to have
freaking win
tariffs
off
on
of that.
$300 billion of
That's
goods.
not how this
On
game
August
works,
13th,
Amy.
he cuts it in half.
Milk
A week
toast.
later, he says he's going to reduce taxes. The day
Guess who's
after
in the
that, he said
aluminum
he's
business?
going to do it.
Yeah,
The leaders of the world
Feeling
are
it right
watching
now.
this, and it undermines our strength as a nation. And yes, we want fair trade, but we must work with the rest of the world. And he has made a mockery of focused trade policy,
Exactly.
which
Tariffs
I think
are
means
governments playing
enforcement,
games
like
with
we've done in
people's
northern
dollars.
Minnesota, passing bills, getting President Obama to do
That
more
is-
on
that
that,
is what tariffs
so
are.
that our workers can benefit. So we are importing, exporting goods, and making sure that is a competitive policy where our goal is that we are making things, inventing things, and exporting to the world. He is defeating that goal.
Secretary Castro, you actually in one of the previous debates identified China as the most serious national
they said
security
fair
threat
trade, not-
to our country. I
or
want to pick up on
not
what Senator
free trade.
Klobuchar was saying there. She said she'd go back to the negotiating table. The question is, what do you do for leverage? Where do you get it?
Well, look, I agree with those who have said that this erratic, haphazard trade war
this guy.
is hurting
Oh,
American
Castro,
families.
okay,
As Senator
He's
Klobuchar
got
said,
that memorable
300,000
name.
American jobs. It's estimated that it's cost $600 to the average American family. Just a couple of days ago, 60% of Americans said that they believe that we're in for a recession next year. So, when I become
Stop
president,
saying
I would
that.
Tell you what, something's
immediately
coming.
begin to negotiate with
Just keep
China to
talking about
ratchet
it.
down that trade war. We have leverage there. I also believe, though, that we need to return
I can
to
tell you by the
a
market I'm
leader
in,
when it comes to
something's
things like
coming.
human rights. We have millions of Uyghurs, for instance, in China that right now are being imprisoned and mistreated. And in North Korea,
I
this
mean, yes, the
president is
Uyghurs
elevating
are terrible.
a
Can we
dictator.
talk about Hong Kong?
We need to stop that. We need to return to ensuring that
Ooh,
America
Hong
leads
Kong's
again
fun. Yeah,
on
let's
human
talk about
rights.
that.
When it comes to this trade war, I would immediately begin ratcheting that trade war down. We have leverage in that
Clearly
discussion.
clever? I hope you're
Warren, let me
being
bring you in on
facetious.
this
'cause that is a
conversation.
super
President Obama
false
signed the
statement.
Trans-Pacific Partnership. In part, it was designed to rein in China, to bring China in
Sucking all that
to
juice dry.
some kind of regulation. What do you
What?
think he got wrong?
So, our trade policy in America has
Somebody
been
say that?
broken for
Really
decades.
clever. He's going back and forth.
And it has been broken because it works for giant multinational corporations and not for much of anyone
'cause he
else.
said China
These are
tariffs cost
giant
us zero.
corporations that, shoot, if they can save a nickel
I can't remember.
by moving a job to a foreign country, they'll do it in a heartbeat. For decades now, who's been whispering in the ears of our trade
Okay,
negotiators?
Michael.
Who
Have fun
has
with that, I
shaped our
guess.
trade policy? It's been the giant corporations.
That one I don't have a button
It's
for.
been their lobbyists and their executives. The way we change our trade policy in America is first, the procedures. Who sits at the table? I want to negotiate trade with unions at the table. I want to negotiate it with small farmers at the table. I want to negotiate it with environmentalists
One more example of
at
where
the
the
table.
tariffs cost us
I want to
anything more.
negotiate
Steel,
with human rights activists at the table.
imports,
And you
granary,
asked the question
machinery,
about leverage. If
textiles.
I can just respond to that
Need
one.
any more?
The leverage? Are you kidding? Everybody wants access to the American
I'm
market.
walking that line. I'm too
That
fucked
means
up.
that we have the capacity to
Drink
say,
some
right
water.
here in America, you want to come sell goods to American consumers, then you've got to raise your standards. You've got to raise your labor standards, and you've got to raise your environmental standards so our companies can compete on a level playing field. We can use trade not to
sounds dirty,
undermine
Mom.
American workers and not to undermine American farms and not
Yeah,
to
that was in
undermine
machinery.
small businesses in this country. We
Inflation
can use
has
trade
decreased. Check
to help
yourself.
build a stronger economy.
Senator Harris, how would your trade policy differ from
watching
President
That doesn't have
Obama's?
anything to do with the tariffs.
Well,
Watch
first
them
of all,
crunch the
I have
numbers.
no criticism of that more than just looking at where we are now, which is that we've got a guy in the White
I
House
100%
who's been
agree,
erratic
Opeth.
on trade policy. He conducts trade policy by
We're on the
tweet,
brink of a
frankly,
crash.
born out of his fragile ego.
Yeah.
It has resulted in farmers in Iowa
like it, but
with
yeah.
soybeans rotting in bins, looking at bankruptcy. When we look at this issue,
That's
my
awesome,
trade
Aaron.
policy under a Harris administration is
doing a
always
good
going to
job.
be
Punk
about
for me.
saying we need to export American products, not American jobs. And to do that, we have to have a meaningful trade policy. I am not a protectionist Democrat. Look, we need to sell our stuff.
And that means we need to sell it to people overseas. That
That's
means
what we
we
say,
need
'cause our
trade
house is
policies
cluttered.
that allow that to happen. You asked earlier about China. It's a complicated relationship. We have to hold China accountable. They steal our products, including our intellectual property. They dump substandard products into our economy. They need to be held accountable. We also need to partner with China on climate and the crisis that presents. We need to partner with China on the issue of North Korea. I am on, and I think the only person on this stage, the Senate Intelligence Committee and
clearly
the Senate
clever.
Homeland
Obviously,
Security Committee.
you are
We need to
severely
partner on the issue of
misinformed.
North Korea. But the bottom
Walmart
line
and
is
Amazon,
this.
all prices
Donald
have
Trump,
decreased. Nothing has increased
in
in price.
office
Nothing
on
has
trade
increased
policy.
in
You
price.
know, he reminds
I
me
want to
of
make sure that
that
that is
guy
your
in The
claim.
Wizard of Oz,
So go
you know,
ahead
when
and
you
repeat.
pull back
Nothing
the
has
curtain,
increased
the
in
really
price.
small dude.
Nothing.
You're wrong.
Crepes are good.
Get them.
Okay.
Nothing has increased.
Always doubling down.
Hey, how much does it cost your business to buy aluminum now that the tariffs are going into effect? About 10%, maybe? Somewhere around there?
I'm feeling it all the way up.
Yeah, exactly. From top to fucking bottom. Because when show me a price. You want me to get out a fucking statement? You want me to get a bill statement for you? You want me to print out a receipt? Like, yeah, we had to buy this much aluminum from China? Don't be willfully ignorant about this, man. That's the kind of stuff that makes me mad.
And we really don't get any foreign aluminum. The only we get from Canada or something like that, but all the prices
I
gone
gotta
up.
say to my good friend Joe Biden,
Yes, prove
Joe
it.
and I
All right, if that's how you're going to be, you can
on
just...
trade. I
anything,
helped
man.
lead the opposition to NAFTA and PNTR, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs.
Who's getting a room?
And what happened is
Me and you? We already have a room.
people who had those jobs ended up getting other jobs,
Wait,
making
can I?
50%
I have to
of
reach
what
over. You get to Christian.
they made in manufacturing. So Trump obviously hasn't a clue. Trump thinks that trade policy is a
Force
tweet
Walmart to
at
buy
3 o'clock in
domestically.
the morning.
See, this is a fair
What we have
criticism.
got to do is develop a trade policy that represents workers, represents the farmers in the Midwest and elsewhere who are losing billions right now because of Trump's policy. A trade policy which understands that if a company
was
shuts
looking at the
down
wrong
in America
Christians over
and
here,
goes
but I can't
abroad
reach 'em.
and then thinks they're going to get
Wait, should I go the wrong
online
way?
to get a lucrative federal contract under Bernie Sanders, they got another guess coming.
Vice President Biden, he invoked your name.
Yeah.
He invoked your name.
Let me clear my throat.
Biden has been invoked.
We make up 25% of the world economy. We need another 25% to join us.
He's getting a little
And I
tired now.
think
He seems.
Senator Warren is correct. At the
can
table
put you
has
right
to
next
be
to Christian.
labor,
Don't.
and at the table has to be
Right on top of
environmentalists.
Christian.
The fact of the matter is,
Hi,
China,
Christian.
the problem isn't the trade deficit. The problem is they're stealing our intellectual property. The problem is they're violating the WTO. They're dumping steel on us. That's a different issue than whether or not
Aaron,
they're
you should
dumping
send that to
agricultural
them.
products on us.
I like
In
that,
addition
'cause
to
he doesn't
that,
know I'm
we're in a
doing
position
that.
where
He doesn't
if
see
we
our
don't
stream.
set the
Look at-
rules,
he is
we in fact are
involved
going to find
listening,
ourselves
but he's
with
all over the
China
place.
setting the rules. And that's why you need to organize the world
Love looking
to
at
take
his
on
face, so
China
he's
to stop the
listening
corrupt
like,
practices that are underway.
Senator Booker, close out this round.
Sure. There's one point we're really missing on the stage right now, which is the fact that Donald Trump's America First policy is actually an America
There you go.
isolated, an America alone policy. From trade to
Yep.
battling China to
we
the
just have
global
government?
crisis of climate
I don't care. I
change,
love this
the
guy. I
challenges
think
in
he's
the Middle
fun.
East. He is pulling
Because
us
he's fun.
away from our allies,
He's
out
funny.
of the Iran deal, out of the Paris Climate Accords.
Booker?
And on trade,
Yeah, he's fun to
decided
hear. I
take
like
on
his
China,
voice. I like
while at the same time
everything
taking
about
on
him.
tariff battles
I'm
with
paying-
all of our
Exact opposite.
allies.
I'm not paying
You
attention to what
literally
he's
have
saying.
him using a national
like his cadence,
security
everything.
waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now, look, I'm the only person on the stage that finds Trudeau's hair very menacing, but they are not a national security threat. We cannot go up against China alone.
Because of his hair? Wait, what?
I think he's just trying to joke.
Like Duterte and Putin.
That's going to
does
stick
with
with him
Merkel
for
and
the
Macron,
rest
the strongest nation on the planet Earth.
He's like, listen, I've already lost this, so he's going to start a stand-up routine.
I'm going to be in the headlines tomorrow. Watch this.
Common purpose. That's how we
Hold
beat
my
China.
Coke.
That's how we beat climate change on the planet Earth, and that's how American values are the ones that lead on issues of trade and workers' rights.
David.
George, thank you. I want to turn
Why
now
not?
to our
It's
troops
probably his last
overseas
time
and
on
to
stage,
America's
so why
latest
not?
war in Afghanistan.
No,
U.S.
shit
talks
like
with the
that'll get you
Taliban
on the
dead,
front page of
according to
New York
President
Times.
Yeah.
Secret
I wanna
talks
hear them
at
all
Camp
turn into
David have been
anti-war people
canceled
this
before
year.
they could happen. Many
That's
of
right,
you have
Patrick's
waited on
time.
that already. So I want to move past that tonight to what all of you have promised on the campaign trail. Many of you on this stage
That's
have
right,
said
Miguel.
you'd bring
Yeah.
the troops home in your first term. Others have said in
We
your
are
first
all
year.
Ron Paul
Senator
2012.
Warren,
That's
we all know
right
the
here.
presidency is much
Or
different than the
earlier,
campaign trail.
even
President
2008.
Obama
We're
wanted to
stuck
bring
in
the
that
troops
period
home.
of time.
President Trump promised to bring the troops home. And you have said of Afghanistan, let's help them reach a peace settlement. It is time to bring our troops home, in your words, starting right now. Would you keep that promise to bring the troops home starting right now with no deal with the Taliban?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. What we're doing right now in
pretty good.
Afghanistan is not helping the safety and security of the United States.
over everything.
It is
Did
not
you see
helping the
that?
safety and security of the world.
What?
It is not
Comes up
helping
over
the safety
everything.
and
Yeah.
security of Afghanistan.
That's how I made it.
We need to bring our troops home. And then we
gonna do it
need to
again.
make a big shift.
That's pretty good.
We cannot ask our military to keep solving problems that cannot be solved militarily. We're not going to bomb our way to a solution in Afghanistan. We need to treat the problem
really.
of terrorism as a worldwide problem.
Yeah.
And
No.
that
Yeah.
means we need to be working with all of our allies, our European allies,
what a
our
novel
Canadian
idea.
allies,
Wow.
our Asian allies, our allies
meddling
in
and
Africa,
fucking
in
shit up.
South America. We need to work
That's how
together to root out
applaud.
terrorism.
I
It
play
means
my-
using all of our tools. It means economic investment.
that's pretty
It
good.
means expanding our diplomatic efforts instead of hollowing out the State Department and deliberately making it so we have no eyes and ears in many of these countries. We need a foreign policy that is about our security and about leading on our values.
Senator Warren, a quick follow on that, because top U.S. leaders, military leaders on the ground in Afghanistan told me you can't do it without a deal with the Taliban. You just said you would. You would bring them home. What if they told you that? Would you listen to their advice?
I was in Afghanistan with John McCain 2 years ago this past summer. I think it may
Liberal
have been
hero
Senator
John
McCain's
McCain.
last trip before he was sick. And I talked to people. We did. We talked to military
Whiskey.
leaders, American and local leaders. We talked to people on the ground and asked the question, the same one I asked on the Senate Armed Services Committee, every time one of the generals comes through. Show me what winning looks like. Tell me what it looks like.
Yeah.
And what you hear is a lot of because no
don't
one
know.
can describe it. And the reason
How do you
no
win
one
this
can
shit?
describe it is because the problems in Afghanistan are not problems that can be solved by a military. I have 3 older brothers who all served in the military.
Stop it, Elizabeth.
I understand firsthand the kind of commitment they have made. They will do anything we ask them to do. But we cannot ask them to solve
true.
problems that they alone cannot solve.
Yeah.
We need to work with the rest of the world. We need to use our economic tools. We need to use our diplomatic tools. We need to build
She's
with
out.
our allies.
Yeah.
And
Because
we need
she's
She's going on the bench with Tulsi.
Yeah.
to bombing in Afghanistan.
Senator Warren.
Oh, you're anti-war.
I do want to stay on this.
Get your ass out of
Mayor,
here.
I'd like to introduce you to
You're the only
Tulsi.
veteran on the stage who served in Afghanistan.
We need to
We
keep
heard
these
in recent
wars
days from
going.
General Joseph Dunford, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said in recent days, I'm not going to use the word withdrawal right now. It's our judgment the Afghans need support to deal with a level of violence. If he's not even using the word withdrawal, would you put your promise to bring troops home in the
I can
first year
see
on
you,
hold
clearly clever.
to follow the advice?
You know, I served under
batteries.
General Dunford.
I'm drinking.
Way
What can I
under
say?
General Dunford in
I
Afghanistan.
do. I'd smoke
And
cigs if I could,
today, September 12th, 2019, means that today you could be 18 years old enough to serve, and have not been alive on
and not
9/11.
be allowed to drink.
I
We have
remember
got
with a kid.
to put an end to endless.
I remember that line.
And the way we do it is see to it that that country will never again be used for an attack against our homeland, and that does not require an open-ended commitment of ground troops. Let me say something else, because if there's one thing we've learned about Afghanistan, from Afghanistan, it's that the best way not to be caught
Stop
up
it,
in
Celeste.
endless war is to avoid starting one in the first place. And so, when I am president, An authorization for the use of military force will have a built-in 3-year sunset. Congress will be required to vote, and a president will be required to go to Congress to seek an authorization. Because if our troops can summon the courage to go overseas, the least our members of Congress should be able to do is summon the courage to take a vote on whether they ought to be there. By the way, we also have a president
Vote on
right
war?
now who seems to treat troops as props, or worse, tools for his own enrichment. We saw what's going on with flights apparently being routed through Scotland just so people can stay at his hotels. I'll tell you, as a military officer, the very first thing that goes through your mind, the first time you ever make eye contact with somebody that you are responsible for in uniform, is do not let these men and women down. This president is doing exactly that. I will not.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you. I want to turn to Vice President Biden.
He gives them money.
The concerns
That's about it.
Any possible vacuum being created in Afghanistan if you
Is
pull
that
the
even
U.S. troops
constitutional?
out
Vote
has
on
been heightened
war?
by what we've seen in recent days on the ground in Iraq. When you were Vice President, President Obama turned to you to bring the troops home from Iraq. You have said on the campaign trail, quote, I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq. There was a major drawdown of U.S. troops, and then ISIS seized, by some estimates, 40% of the territory in Iraq. You then had to send thousands of troops back in. Was it wrong to pull out of Iraq that quickly, and did the move actually help ISIS take hold?
No, it wasn't wrong
No,
to pull up. I want
it
to
was
answer
already too late.
Afghanistan question. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, not with a gun, and I admire my friend for his service. But I've been out of Afghanistan, I think, more than anybody on this, and it's an open secret.
If we didn't invade
We reported
Iraq,
a long time ago, George, that I was
most of this wouldn't have
opposed
been
to
a
the
problem.
surge in Afghanistan. The whole purpose of going to Afghanistan was to not have a counterinsurgency, meaning that we're going to put that country together. It cannot be put together. Let me say it again. It will not be put together. It's 3 different countries. Pakistan owns the 3 counties, the 3 provinces in the east. They're not any part of it. The economies run it. I will go on and on, but here's the point. The point is that it's a counter-terrorism strategy. We can prevent the United States from being the victim of terror coming out of Afghanistan by providing for bases, and insist the Pakistanis provide bases for us to airlift from and to move against what we know. We don't need those troops there. I would bring them home, and Joe Dunford's a fine guy, but this has been an internal argument we've had for 8 years. With regard to Iraq, the fact of the matter is that, I should have never voted to give Bush the authority to go in and do what he said he was going to do. The AUMF was designed, he said, to go in and get the Security Council to vote 15-0 to allow inspectors to go in and determine whether or not anything was being done with chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. And when that happened, he went ahead and went anyway without any of that proof. I said something that was not meant the way I said it. I said from that point on, what I was argued against in the beginning, once he started to put the troops in, was that, in fact, we were doing it the wrong way. There was no plan. We should not be engaged. We didn't have the people with us. We didn't have our alliance. We didn't have allies with us, etc. And it was later, when we came into office, the president turned to me and said, Joe, when they said we got a plan to get out, he turned to the whole security and said, Joe will organize this, get the troops home.
I really want to
My
hear
son
what he has
spent a
to say
year in
about
Iraq, and I understand. And we were right to get the combat troops out. The big mistake that was made, which we predicted,
definitely over time,
was that you would not have a circumstance.
The clock doesn't
where
exist when
the
Biden's
Shia
talking.
Totally.
And the Kurds would work together to keep ISIS from moving in.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to turn to Senator Sanders.
He was obviously
because
done
the
with his
concern
statement,
over
so we're going to cut him off
Afghanistan
now.
is very similar to what we saw in Iraq when the troops came out.
If you guys have never
ISIS
seen the
filled
movie
that vacuum.
Vice, I'd highly
What do you
recommend
make
it.
of
It's a very
people out there
interesting
who are worried
perspective
that
on
if we pull
Iraq.
out U.S. troops too quickly from Afghanistan, it will create safe haven all over again, like the plotters of 9/11?
David, let me answer that, but let me just comment on something.
Let me answer something totally different.
You talked about the big mistake in Iraq and the surge. The truth is, the big mistake, the huge mistake,
Huge.
one of the big differences between you and me, I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq.
Ooh.
I voted against the war in Iraq and helped lead the opposition. And it's sad to say, I mean, I kind of had the feeling.
But
that
did he,
there
though?
would be massive
Get off my lawn.
destabilization in that area if we went into that war. As the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I want to pick up on what Pete said. We cannot express our gratitude to all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, who have responded to the call of
Twitter.
But I think also
Twitter.
I am the only person up here to have voted against all 3 of Trump's military budgets.
Not Vice News, Patrick. Vice the
We have
movie.
to spend $750 billion.
Bernie's got
a
some
year
broad
the
shoulders on him,
military,
though. Look how
but we don't
wide
even
those
know
are.
who our enemy is. I think that what we have got to do is bring this world together. Bring it together on climate change.
Nope. Never mind.
Bring
A little
it
bit.
together
little
in
better.
fighting against terrorism. And make it clear that we as a
Somebody
planet,
tossed him a fisherman's
as a
friend.
global community, will work together to help countries around the world rebuild their struggling economies and do
I saw that,
everything
Patrick's.
that we can to
He hit
rid
that
the
speed
world
bag
of
and it hit him
terrorism,
back.
but dropping bombs on Afghanistan and Iraq was not the way to do it.
Senator Sanders, thank you. I want to take this to Mr. Yang. You share the stage, as you know, when we talk about troops in Iraq and Afghanistan with the vice president who
Bernie
was in the
Sanders from the
Situation
Ants
Room,
movie.
with senators who are on the Senate
You
Armed
like the
Services, the
main
Foreign
character?
Relations Committee,
We all have
with an
healthcare down
Afghanistan
here.
veteran who is on the stage tonight. As you share the stage with these candidates, what makes you the most qualified on this stage to be
If we're talking about
Commander-in-Chief?
posture, Trump and his entire family barely know
I've
how to
signed a
stand.
pledge to end the forever wars. We've been in a state
First day of
continuous
standing
conflict
class.
for 18 years, which is not what the American people want. We have to start owning what we can and can't do. We're not very good
I
at
gotta
rebuilding
pee.
countries.
Here we
And
go.
if you want proof, all you have to do is look within our own country at Puerto Rico. We've spent trillions of dollars to unclear benefits, lost thousands of lives, and thank you, Pete, for your service.
But seriously, like
And the goal has
Yang's
to be
neck
to
to his
rebuild
spine is
the
like
relationships that have
down
made
and like in
America
and then
strong
down.
for
Like his
decades.
head is set
I
like
would
way
lead
too
our
far
armed
back.
forces with restraint and
Does he just have a
judgment.
thick? Does
What the
he work
American
out?
people
You
want
think
is
is that what
simply a
that is? That
president
he just does
who
like
has the
neck
right
workouts?
values
Like
and point of view, and they can trust to make the right decisions
neck work.
when it comes to putting our young men and women
Right?
into harm's way.
Or maybe it's
and
too
that's
low.
what I would
I
do
don't
as
know.
president.
Mr. Yang, thank you.
Jorge.
Well, they
Thank you
gave
very
him
much.
15
Vamos a hablar
seconds.
de América Latina. You haven't been asked about Latin America in the previous debate, so let's begin. Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela. A recent UN fact-finding mission found that thousands have been
Fact-finding
disappeared,
mission.
tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why? And
very
what are
white
the main
Hispanic.
differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua?
First of all,
What on a
be very clear.
fact-finding mission?
Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela so that the people of that country can make
Maduro ain't giving that
can
shit up.
create their own future. In terms of democratic socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right. I believe
It's a
that the
service,
United States
Bernie.
should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. I believe that every worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand the trade
you were
union
talking to me, Court.
movement. I happen to believe also that what, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country. You got a handful of billionaires controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an economy that works for all of us, not 1%.
I don't want Canadian health care.
No, it doesn't
I
sound
don't want
fun.
that. Like, I know people
previous
there, and they
45
don't.
seconds.
They're like, no, you're
Sure,
like, you
thank
could just
Jorge.
die in the
I'll call
waiting
Maduro
room
a dictator because he is a dictator.
you don't go bankrupt
And,
because you die. Someone
in
said
the
that.
waiting
What we need to do
Yeah.
is to, along with our
Yep.
allies, make sure that the Venezuelan people get the assistance that
Right.
they need,
One.
that we
Yep.
continue to pressure Venezuela so that they'll have free and fair elections, and also here in the United States, offer temporary protected status, TPS, to Venezuelans. That
did
is
you file
something
your
that the Trump
TPS report?
administration has failed to do. For all of his big talk about supporting the Venezuelan American
Was that
community,
just
he has
something else?
failed. I will not. I also
About you,
believe
Dave.
that we need to do things like a 21st
Yeah.
century Marshall Plan for Honduras, El Salvador,
I know what
and
you're talking
Guatemala,
about.
so that people can find
It's
safety and opportunity at home
Feel we're cooler,
instead of
just
having to make the
OG.
dangerous journey to the United States. And
Vaping,
under my
drinking,
administration,
trying
we're
to
going to put renewed focus on Latin America. It makes sense. They're our neighbors, and we have a lot of things in common. It also makes sense that because we have a country like China that is going around the world to places like Africa and Latin America, making their own relationships, strengthening those. The United States needs to strengthen its partnerships in Latin America immediately.
Thank you, sir.
And I will.
Senator Booker, let me ask you about Brazil. After the recent fires in the Amazon, some experts suggested that eating less meat is one way to help the environment. You are a vegan since 2014. That's obviously a personal choice. But President Trump and Brazil's President Bolsonaro are concerned that climate change regulations could affect economic growth. So should more Americans, including those here in Texas and in Iowa, follow your diet?
You know, first of all, I want to say no. Actually, I want to translate that into Spanish.
Yes, you
No.
do.
He's witty. Okay, as much as I hate the guy.
Let's just be clear.
He just set himself up for
Factory
this.
farming going on that's assaulting this corporate consolidation in the agriculture industry. One of the reasons why I have a bill to put a moratorium on this kind of corporate consolidation is because this factory farming is destroying and hurting our environment.
I'd be okay
and
with synthetic
we see
meat.
independent family
Yeah, I'd
farmers
try it out.
being
If it was almost
pushed
identical,
out of business
yeah.
because of the kind of
okay
incentives
with
we are
that.
giving
I'm fine
that
with that.
don't line up with our values.
I think it's a
That's
fair
what I'm calling
trade-off.
for. But I want to switch because we don't have crowded debate stage. We were talking about Afghanistan and Iraq. It annoys me that we had a conversation about our troops overseas and we didn't say one word about veterans in our country. We have a shameful reality in America that we send people off to war and they often come home with invisible wounds, hurts, and harms. They're disproportionately homeless. You hear stories about women waiting for months for gynecological care through the VA. It is very important that as we,
do that.
as a country, understand
that.
that you're
They
not
make
going to solve every problem with
like,
this outrageous
feel like
increased
they need to go
militarism.
and fight and
that
do
we
this
also make
thing,
sure
and
that we
it's-
stand
they
up
come
for
home
the
with
people
all
that
this
stood for
fucked
us.
up shit.
We end our national
For
anthem
nothing.
with Home of the Brave. It's about time we make this a better home for our bravest.
Congressman O'Rourke, Hurricane Harvey hit this town 2 years ago, and not only is the Amazon burning, Greenland is melting at a record pace. The last 5 years have been the hottest ever recorded, and we have a viewer's question about this. What meaningful action will you take to reverse the effect of climate change, and can we count on you to follow through
I'll be
if
right
your
back, guys.
donors are against it?
Yes, we will follow through regardless of the political consequences or who it offends, because
we're in
this
charge
is the
now.
very future of our planet and our ability for our
We're running the stream.
children and grandchildren to be able to
Wait, what?
survive
Oh.
on
Christian left, we're in
we will make
charge.
sure that we
You
get
went
to
to
net
pee,
zero
probably.
greenhouse
Yeah.
gas emissions
Me too.
no
You
later
left
than the
before I
year
did, though.
2050, that we are halfway there by 2030, that we mobilize $5 trillion over the next 10 years to do that, that we invest here in Houston, Texas, with pre-disaster mitigation grants to protect those communities that are vulnerable to flooding, given the fact that this town has seen 3 500-year floods in just 5 years. You'd like to think you're good for 1,500 years, but you're not. They're coming faster and larger and more devastating than ever. We're also going to make sure that we free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels and embrace renewable wind and solar energy technology, as well as the high-paying, high-skill, high-wage jobs that come along with that. And then we're going to pay farmers for the environmental services that they want to provide. Planting cover
Love that
crops,
name, Butt
keeping
Butter.
more land under conservation, using no-till farming. Regenerative agriculture can pull carbon out of the air and can drive it and sequester it into the soil. That's the way that we're going to meet this challenge, and we're going to bring everyone into the solution.
Many of you want to comment. Let's try to see if we can go very fast, Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. This is the existential crisis of our time. It's, you know, that movie, The Day After Tomorrow? It's today.
True, John.
We have seen a warming in our world like never before. We're seeing flooding in the Midwest, flooding in Houston, fires in the West. And I think having someone leading the
say
ticket
the day
from
after
the
tomorrow
Midwest
is today?
will allow us to talk about this in a different way and get it done.
I got a lot of-
On day
Have you
one,
seen that movie?
I will get us back into the
while
International
ago.
Climate Change Agreement.
Yeah, because
On
like shit was
day
freezing and
2,
boats were
I
tipping
will
over.
bring back
Wolves
the
were running
clean
around
power
everywhere.
rules that President Obama had worked
It was
on. On day
crazy.
3, I will bring back the gas mileage
The ocean
standards.
froze
You can do
after
all
it
that
flooded
without
New York.
Congress, which
Yeah,
is good.
it was
On
crazy.
day 4, 5, and 6,
Today is
I will,
crazy.
working with Congress and mayors and business people all over the country, introduce sweeping
tomorrow.
legislation to get at that 2050 goal. And on day 7, you're supposed to rest, but I won't.
Senator
This
Warren.
is what we need to do if we're going to get at climate change. We have to take this
Yeah, I guess so.
on as a crisis that's happening right now.
Senator Warren, should American foreign policy be
Senator
based around the
Warren.
principle of climate change?
Yes. We need to work on every front on climate change. It is the threat to every living thing on this planet, and we are running out of time. Every time the scientists go back, they say we have less and less time than we thought we had. But that means we've got to use all the tools. One of the tools
Running
we
out of
need
time.
to
It's
use
going
are
to snow this
regulatory
winter,
tools. I
and then
have
we'll know
proposed, following
because of
Governor
the
Inslee,
snow.
that we, by 2028, cut all carbon emissions from new buildings, by 2030, carbon emissions from cars, and by 2035, all carbon emissions from the manufacture of electricity. That alone, those three
15
will
years?
cut our
This girl's
emissions
crazy.
here in the United States by 70%. We can do this. We also need
Oh, we can do it.
help
That's fine.
around
No, she
the
said we
world
can
to
do it.
clean, But understand this one more time.
It's good, guys.
Why doesn't
We can
it
do
happen?
this.
As long as Washington is paying more attention to money than it is to our future, we can't make the changes we need to make. We have to attack the
that
corruption
simple.
head on so that
No, we can do it. She
save
said
our
so.
planet.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds.
When I think about this issue, it really is through the lens of my baby
We can do
nieces who
this.
are 1.5 and 3
Oh,
years old.
Christian, go ahead.
When I
$30
look
trillion
at
healthcare
what is
deal
gonna be
and
the
replace
world
our
if we do
entire
nothing
electrical
when they
infrastructure
turn
in
20,
15
I'm really
years?
scared.
And the buildings and the cars too.
And when I've been
We
in
can
the
do
United
this.
States Senate for now the last 2.5 years, and I look at our counterparts.
Yes,
the
oil subsidies are
Republicans in the
garbage. I
United
get this
States
every
Senate,
time. Oil
They
subsidies are
must
garbage.
be looking at their
All
children,
subsidies
and
are
then when
garbage.
They look at the mirror,
Welfare
I
is
don't know what they
garbage.
see, but it's a lack of courage. And this is an issue
Nuclear
that, yes,
power
it
is a
represents
step,
an
but we can't
existential threat.
replace
It is
all
also
of coal
something
with
we
nuclear
can do
power in
something
15
about.
years.
This
or
is
even
a
with
problem
combination.
that was created by human behaviors.
I want to know how Juan's
And
going
we
between
can change
streams
our
so quick.
behaviors in a way that saves our planet. I've seen it happen in
beautiful.
California. I took on, as the Attorney General of California, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States
remind me.
Department of Justice.
Wow.
I took on the big oil
That's
companies,
great.
and we saw progress. If any
Tax
of you
the
have
climate.
been to Los Angeles 20 years ago, you'll remember that
There's
sky
always
was
money in the
brown.
climate.
You go there now,
One
the sky
phone
is
and
blue,
laptop.
and you know why?
There you go.
Because leader just decided to lead, and we took
He's
on
as
these big
advanced as
fossil
we are
fuel
right now.
companies. We have some of the most important and strongest laws in the
Thank you
country,
very much.
and we made a difference. And
He's
my
like, thank
point
you.
being,
Shut the fuck up.
I've done it before, and I will lead
Stop
as
talking,
president
lady.
on this issue because we have no time. The clock is
We should
ticking.
honor that guy by
Today,
not
we
listening
need
to her
courage,
anymore.
And we need courageous leadership. We can get
Is
They also
her
import
time's up.
most
She
of
shouldn't
their
still be
electricity
talking.
and water.
So to follow up on what
My turn.
Elizabeth said, why are we losing to the fossil fuel companies? Why are we losing to the gun lobby and the NRA? And the answer is this. We all know, everyone on the stage knows, that our government has been overrun by money and corporate interests. Now, everyone here has a plan to try and
that's fair.
curb those corporate interests, but we have to face facts. Money
Lobbying's
finds a
real.
way. Money will find its way
Gang's
back
talking.
in. So what is the answer? The answer is to wash the money out with people-powered money. My proposal is that we give
People-powered
every
money.
American 100 democracy dollars that you can only give to
People-powered
candidates
money.
and causes that you like. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1. That is the only way we will win. And as someone running for president, I'll tell you, there's the people on one side and the money on the other. The only way for us to win is if we bring them together.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Lindsay.
I'd like to have an
Democrats
academic
make you
discussion
drink
now
more.
about education. Mr. Yang, we'll stay with you.
I
Here
feel
in
it.
Houston, the school district is facing
Damn.
yet another year of spending cuts. Like schools across the country, the system faces...
When is it going to be over?
Thousands of students are leaving...
Guys, we can stick together. Like 53 more minutes. We got this. We've come this far.
Democrats who want to limit them are, quote, just jumping into bed with teachers' unions and doing kids a disservice. Why isn't taxpayer money better spent on fixing traditional public schools?
She's going to be really bummed.
Let me be clear.
Because the public school system is broken.
I've got a kid. One of my
feel bad.
Little boys just started public school last week, and I was not there because I was running for president. So we need to pay teachers more because the data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold.
It's like, I feel like we're like the David Blaine of politics. Like we're surviving through this.
Standardized tests which do not measure anything fundamental about our character.
You're right. That's bullshit. Standardized tests.
The big one.
I think government should just get the fuck out.
65 to 70% of our students' outcomes are determined outside of the school. We're talking about time spent at home with the parents, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the house, income, type of neighborhood. We're putting money into schools, and educators know this. We're saying you're 100% responsible for educating our kids, but you can only control 30%. They all know this. The answer is to put money directly into the families and neighborhoods to give our kids a chance to learn and our teachers a chance to teach.
I don't agree with how he,
you can't keep throwing money off. Obviously, that's not
But
working.
I agree with the home environment.
My issue is most of these people say that education is broken and not allow homeschooling. That's a huge problem we have.
Because if you really look at it, homeschooling seems to be doing okay.
Yeah,
I believe in
and
public
growing.
education. And in order to strengthen it, some things are very complex for preparing for a future where knowledge is at your fingertips, but we got to teach more to do with critical thinking and social and emotional learning. Some of it is extremely simple. We've just got to pay teachers more. And we've got to lift up the teaching profession. I always think of a story from South Bend of friends who hosted exchange students from Japan. They had a student
Cool story, bro.
Who
Christian's struggling listening to this because he really grasps it, Donnie.
She took the exam to try to become a teacher.
It's killing him
in a
inside.
society that really regards teachers and compensates teachers well. And she came up just short. So you know what she did? She was academically good, but couldn't quite make the cut to be a teacher. She had a fallback plan. She became a doctor.
He said fall black.
That is how seriously some countries treat the teaching profession. If we want to get the results that we expect for our children, we have to support and compensate the teaching profession.
Yeah.
Respect teachers the way we do soldiers, and pay them more like the way we do doctors.
More than
Senator
zero.
Warren, to use Mr. Yang's
I just want my money back for not
jumping
using
into bed
it
with teachers unions.
in our own school district.
I think I'm the only person on the stage who has been a public school teacher.
Oh.
Some of them are good.
I want a DNA test.
Since I was in second grade. And let's be clear in all the ways we talk about this, money for public schools should stay in public schools, not go anywhere else. I've already made my commitment. We will have a Secretary of Education
well, I wish
who
I
has
could
been
like your
a
comment.
public school teacher. I think this is ultimately about our values. I have proposed a 2% wealth tax.
I'm saying get the
on
hell
top
out.
1/10 of 1% in this country. That would give us enough money to start with our babies by providing universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5.
Babies. Will somebody think of the babies?
Pre-K for every 4-year-old and 4-year-old in this country. Raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in this country. Cancel student loan debt for 95% of the folks who got it.
Throw that in there.
I missed it. What?
Cancel student loan debt for like.
Oh, yeah.
Build an America that reflects
Money's
our
not real.
values, not just where the money comes from with the billionaires.
$1.5 trillion of absolved debt.
Yikes.
My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson.
Now, honestly, they're
West Chester,
talking about federal
attended
student
my law school
loans, and they're just going to keep
I
privatizing
think
it
most
if
of
that
us would
happens.
say that we are not where we
until
are
they just don't
without
have
the
to pay it
teachers who
back.
believed in us. I have offered in this campaign a proposal to deal with this, which will be the first in the nation federal investment in closing the
First
teacher
in the
pay
nation.
gap, which is
First in the nation.
$13,500 a year. Because
That's what they'll do.
right now in our
They'll
public
absolve the
schools,
federal
our
student
teachers,
loan, but the federal
94%
student
of them
loans
are
are just selling
coming out
them
of
to
their
private
own pocket
companies.
to help pay for school supplies. And that is wrong. I also want to talk about where we are here at TSU and what it means in terms of HBCUs. I have
as part of my proposal that we will put $2 trillion into investing in our HBCUs for teachers because one, as a proud graduate of a historically black college and university, I will say that it is our HBCUs that disproportionately produce teachers and those who serve in these many professions. But this is a critical point. If a black child has a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college. If that child has had 2 black teachers before the end of 3rd grade, they are 32% more likely to go to college.
So she pushing homeschooling again?
Investing in our public education system, it is at the source of so much. When we fix it, that will fix so many other things. We must invest in the potential of our children. And I strongly believe you can judge a society based on how it treats its children, and we are failing on this issue.
I just want to say this, David, because you brought it up a second ago. Both Bernie and Warren's plans will cancel all student debt, private and federal.
You're guessing. All right, here's the answer.
Wow. $1.6 trillion.
We are the wealthiest
That sounds like a whole lot of theft, though. It's a lot of theft.
How do you just
the highest child poverty rate of almost any country on earth. We have teachers in this country who are leaving education because they can't work 2 or 3 jobs to support themselves, which is why under my legislation, we will move to see that every teacher in America makes at least $60,000 a year.
Wow.
What we will also do is not only have
even the bad teachers,
pre-K, we will make public colleges and universities
because they're still going to have tenure and unions.
Free. And what we will also do, because
not one of these fools is wearing an American flag pin.
I feel like they all are. Well, I see. What's he got on?
Nothing
I can't
wrong
see it.
except trying to get the education they need. We are going to cancel all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
You said cancel it all.
Do that by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Let's outlaw student loans. Let's start with that and see how college prices go.
In a conversation about how to deal with segregation
Joe's like,
back in
fuck yeah, I'm ready for this.
They're going to bring up the
I don't feel
busing.
responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation, and I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago. You said that some 40 years ago.
What?
But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility do
You
you
said
think
that some
America
40 years
takes
ago.
to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Do you know what I said some 40 years ago?
Look, there is.
I wasn't even
That looks a
born.
little personal. Not gonna lie.
And from the
That
time I
looked a
got
little
involved, I
personal.
started
That's near.
dealing with that. Redlining, banks, making sure that we are in a position where, look, talk about education. I propose that what we take is those very poor schools,
status, like
the
10
Title I
years ago.
schools, triple the
You
amount of
know?
money we spend from 15 to 45 billion a year. Give every single teacher a
Not like
raise,
I'm
an
defending
equal
him, but
raise of getting
still.
out the $60,000 level. Number 2, make sure that we bring in to the help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have one school psychologist for every 1,500 kids.
Taxes are
in
great.
America.
I'm fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I thought Biden sold all his
My
slaves.
wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does in fact have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers in.
He's still got the sex slaves in the basement, but
how to
those don't
raise their
count.
children. It's not that they don't want to help. They don't know quite what to do. Play the radio. Make sure the television. Make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school.
Did you say record player?
Will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time we get there. There's so much we. No, I'm going to go like the rest of them do.
Okay, fossil.
Okay? Because here's the deal. The deal is that we've got this a little backwards. And by the way, in Venezuela, we should be allowing people to come here from Venezuela. I know Maduro. I've confronted Maduro. Number 2, you talk about the need to do something in Latin America. I'm the guy that came up with
Joe loves kids.
$740 million. to see to it those 3 countries, in fact, change their system so people don't have a chance to leave. You're all acting like we just discovered this yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Secretary
Y'all acting like we just discovered this.
Y'all acted like
You run around like I don't have guns. What, you think I sold them all?
In a neighborhood that was
I want to hear
grappling with the
Julian
legacy of
Castro
segregation.
be a
In fact, in
shitty
two
asshole.
public school districts that were involved in a
my gosh,
1973
I'm so
Supreme
drunk.
Court case challenging the Texas
Gotta be.
finance.
It's the only way we're going to survive this.
And I know that today our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated. Now, I have an
I'm just
education
gonna
plan
guess
like a
we
lot
had
of folks
another
up
one.
here that would pay
Oh,
teachers more,
yeah.
that would recruit diverse
Dude,
ranks of teachers,
that
that
is
would
such
invest in our
crap.
public schools. But I also believe that we have to connect the dots to uplift the quality of life, to invest in housing opportunity.
I would love to
invest
just
in
watch
job
Christian
opportunity, to invest
watch
in community schools.
I almost feel bad for being on here.
I know. I want to just watch just him.
opportunities and those things.
The high school that I went to was majority Latino, and it wasn't even like an overwhelming majority. It was like 53%.
In addition to lifting up our public schools, you asked a second ago about
That's
charter
quite
schools.
diversified.
Look, it
Yeah.
is a myth that
I
charter
grew up
schools
with,
are better than
I
public
think,
schools.
pretty much
They're
zero
not.
Latinos.
There's like 3 black people in your
No,
county
2.
school.
We had 2 black
Oh,
guys.
sorry, 2.
One of them didn't know he was black.
It would require more transparency and accountability from them than is required right now.
Senator Booker, coming to you now. It was 65 years ago this year that
Y'all
the
act like
Supreme
you've never
Court
seen a
outlawed
white person
racial
before.
segregation in
Jason,
public
I love it
schools.
too. I
Yet
love
for
it.
millions
I
of
love
students
it.
of color today, segregation remains a reality. Non-white districts typically receive $2,200
Oh, that's
less
my
per
boy.
student than those in white districts. This means
I guess I'm
older books,
racist then,
less
not
access
just-
to computers,
That makes me
often
racist.
worse outcomes. What is your plan to address segregation? And I'm not just talking about the achievement gap, but I'm talking about the opportunity gap in education.
So I'm hearing a lot of conversations
Everybody shut up.
on the stage that, and the way we talk about communities of color. Look, I live in a black and brown community below the poverty line. I've lived in public housing projects almost for a decade and saw the anguish of parents who are just so deeply frustrated that they don't have a school that serves their needs. I think I'm the only person on the stage, even though I had no formal authority as mayor to run a school system, I stepped up and took responsibility for our schools. And we produced
Me too,
results.
Johnny.
A lot of folks here talking about raising teacher salary. We actually did it in Newark, New Jersey. And we didn't stop there. We closed poor performing charter schools, but dagnabbit, we expanded
Dagnabbit,
high
that's some
performing
hard
charter
language.
schools. We were a city that said we need to find local
I am
solutions
not
that
gonna
work
swear
for
like
our community.
Bernie.
The results speak for themselves. We're now the #1 city in America for beat the odds schools, from high poverty to high performance. Strategies like investing in our children work. And I'll tell you this, I am tired of us thinking about
Nachos,
these
I'm pretty sure
problems
this is a Wayans
isolated,
brother.
disconnected from other issues. That's why my friend Secretary Castro is 100% right.
I don't know which one. There's
We
so
are
many of them.
in the reality we are right now because
Yeah, not TV.
overtly racist policies, not 400 years ago,
It's the
but just
Wayans.
in my lifetime. That we're redlining communities, disinvesting in communities, and more than just that, my kids are not
And they
only
brought back
struggling
Ace
with racial
Ventura.
segregation and housing, and the challenges of underfunded schools, but they're also struggling with environmental injustice. If you've talked to someone who's a parent of a child who's had permanent brain damage because of lead, you'll know this is a national problem because there's over 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan.
Thank you.
And so if I'm president of the United States, it is a holistic solution to education, from raising teacher salary, fully funded special education, but combating the issues
A lot of
poverty,
money.
combating the issues of racial segregation, combating the issues of a criminal justice system
Thank
that
you,
takes
Senator.
parents away from their kids, and dealing with environmental justice as a major
It's
pillar
a
of any
noble
climate
goal,
policy.
but it's a
Thank
lot
you,
of
Lindsay.
money.
One final question coming up.
I zoned out, guys. Sorry.
Fix the world. His goal is to fix the world. Okay, we have
Yay!
another break.
Couple bucks. Couple bucks. We
Oh
can fix
wow,
the
was
world.
a private school one?
10
Oh my
candidates.
gosh.
Incredible night. And now, right after the debate wraps, the candidates
Families
step
realize
into the
it was
spin
better
ring for their
investment.
first live reaction.
So, oh wait, okay. So Juan,
buddy.
you went to a school. I want to read up,
Oh,
but it's
So
okay.
I'm
Juan
not
was
saying that there are no such thing as like more segregated schools and communities. When I was really little, my mom was an educator and she just gotten her license, and we grew up in a really low income area. And yes, the school that I went to was majority African American. I have a picture from my kindergarten class. I'm one of 2 white kids in the class. Now, is that a problem? I don't see that as an issue. It was probably really healthy for me growing up, honestly, to be in a situation where there was, where I kind of was the odd kid out. But, and then I moved to Texas, and then next thing, I was never really in a community or a region to where it was all just white people or all just this or that or the other.
Yeah.
I've always lived in areas that were, and like they say they're right in the news segment whenever they were talking about how Houston is the most diverse city in America. It is. It is the best ratios of all the ethnic groups. So maybe growing up there has a lot to do with my perspective on that. But again, I have to be honest. At the same time, if I drove 20 minutes east, I'd run into a town called Santa Fe, and there are no people of minorities who live there because I say none, but most of them would choose not to live there because of the kind of people that live there.
Okay.
So
it's
that kind of town.
Yeah.
Abrasive environment for them.
And it's a small one. It's a very small town. But yeah, it's very, very hostile to minorities.
Really?
Again, I just have to be honest. Like, the whole planet, the whole United States is not like white people go to this school, black people go to this school,
Right.
Hispanic people go to this school. So
we
still have a perfect ratio.
Yeah. Right.
I guess you have to.
You
have to count all the people in the country
And I don't
by
I
race,
don't, yeah, I
and
don't,
then figure out the equation.
I don't want that for my children,
But still, it wouldn't be right. Even if it's a minority, it can't be a minority. Otherwise, that's racist.
I hate that. I don't want that. I want them to just embrace just being a human with another human.
Oh, that's how our kids are.
Our kids are just like, I think they're
doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's like they're their skin's a little bit darker than mine, and that's okay. Mine's a little bit lighter.
Say exactly what Chris said is.
Oh yeah.
He's brown, and that's fine because that's a normal color to be.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is. It doesn't fucking matter.
I mean, obviously, you're going to see that person's brown, this person's white.
I need to address something in my chat real quick.
Yeah, no, please do. Yep.
Some commentary going on here that's a little bit more absolute than it should be.
That's okay.
Michael
do
and
it.
Nachos are having a conversation about
it's pretty hard line
up cultures. Yeah, and I want to make it extremely clear that you're not suggesting that they're incapable of raising successful people, right? Because that's kind of how it comes off when you say like an entire culture. Is incapable of. It's a little. That's I can say that in all cultures there are issues, including white cultures.
Sure.
There are issues. That's why we have such an incredibly high suicide rate. That's why we're more likely to become serial killers. That's why we're more likely to do rape people. Did you know that white people most likely to rape people?
Oh.
Weird. Yeah.
Weird.
There's a lot of issues in white culture, but there are also issues in all cultures.
Yeah.
Every group, every tribe, however you want to look at it, all have a unique set of issues that has to be overcome. So,
yeah, obviously we got our own problems as white people.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah! Are you kidding me? Oh my god!
I'm not like a social justice warrior.
No.
Here. I just like to be as fair as possible. About
Yeah,
the conversation. And if we're gonna, we have to be completely honest. So like, if we're gonna start saying like, the reason that these low-income areas, you're consistently low-income, is because there's a culture issue, and they have to change the culture. And it's like, yes and no. Like, sure, there can be a cultural issue, but it's not like these people are incapable of overcoming these obstacles.
Right. Yeah. Okay, but so let's say, like me, devil's advocate. Though
you could say race and culture are two different things, but you can't tell me that there isn't some kind of link between the two. I'm not trying. It's not like a racist statement to say that. Like,
how do people overcome this cultural issue then, or where it's like in Erie, where it's like Lower East Side, and it's just it's a different place to live.
World.
It doesn't matter your color. It doesn't matter where the fuck you're from. It is a different way of living. So how do these folks overcome that? Like, I'm just, that's me asking an honest question. Like, how do we help them to help their families and to move forward to do better together?
Recover from it, and what did you learn?
Oh shit, it's back.
President Biden.
Damn it. Okay, can we come back to that? Because I really want to ask that question.
I never counted any professional setback I have as a serious setback. There's things that are important, things that are unimportant.
I did. You said that.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, it's popping off now. It's popping off. Is it boogaloo time? Is it time?
We're going to clear the
Are we doing this?
protesters now. Just 1 minute.
Oh, we're going to clear out the protesters
We doing
because we
this?
can't have people who are...
All right, well, I'm going to turn this down until
Senator Biden, we'll start the
they get
clock
their-
again.
they get their shit together.
Trump's going to come on and
I
be
wouldn't
like...
talk over that, honestly. If I
No.
was Joe Biden, I wouldn't talk over that.
Wait,
Like,
and
I'm not going to put up with that.
Yeah, you hold my counter.
I'm sorry.
Elizabeth Warren's like, go, Joe. Go, Joe.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
There's setbacks and there's setbacks.
Okay.
And I think the most critical setback that can occur to anyone is to lose. Well, my dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up. And he used to say, never explain and never complain. And then go on to say that the only obligation that really matters, the most important thing, is family. And so I was raised to believe that that was the center of everything.
Why, though?
Family.
Oh, no.
You could be
Not to a
judged not based
socialist.
how you treat your family and how you went from there. And it took, Kierkegaard said, faith sees best in the dark. Right after I got elected, my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, and my 2 sons are badly injured. And I just been elected, not sworn in.
Holy
And,
shit.
I lost my faith for a while. I came back. And then later when my son Bo came home from Iraq and with a terminal disease, and a year and a half later, losing him was like losing part of my soul. But the fact is
Holy
that
cow.
I learned that the way you deal with it
been
is you
through
deal
some
with
shit.
finding purpose.
I didn't know
Purpose in
that.
what you do.
What did he say?
And
This whole
that's
fucking
why
family
I
died.
hope he's proud of me today because he wanted to make sure I didn't run for president, but I stayed engaged. Because when you get hit badly, whether you're losing a job or you're raising a family like
Yeah,
my
that was
dad,
harsh
where
one.
you have to make that longest walk up the stairs to tell your kid you can't live here anymore. Dad lost his job. We've all went through that in some form or another. And it just for me, the way I've dealt with it is finding purpose. And my purpose is do what I've always tried to do and stay engaged in public policy. But there's a lot of people that through a lot worse than I have, get up every single morning, put their feet
I don't know
in
about
front of
that. That
another
was
without
pretty
the help
fucking
I
rough.
had.
It's
They're real
Not
heroes.
me, but
Senator Warren.
Hi, Trey.
I definitely have it way better.
Holy cow. I didn't know any of that. That
I
was
mentioned
rough.
earlier, I've known what
I'm gonna
I
need a
wanted to be
minute.
since second grade.
It's just gonna
I
drop
wanted
that
to
shit
be
on
a
us.
public school teacher. And I invested early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation for being tough but fair.
Me too,
By the
girl.
time I graduated from high school, my family didn't have
Elizabeth
money for a college
Tough.
application, much less to send me off to 4 years at a university.
I
And
will
my story, like a
tomahawk
lot of
you.
stories, has a lot of twists and turns. Got a scholarship,
I know, his
and
whole
then at
family.
19, got married, dropped out of school, took a minimum wage job, thought my dream was over. I got a chance down the road at the University of Houston. And I made it as a special needs teacher. I still remember that first year as a special needs teacher. I could tell you what those babies looked like. I had 4 to 6-year-olds. But at the end of that first year, I was visibly pregnant. And back in the day, that meant that the principal said to me, wish me luck, and hired someone else for the job. So there I am. I'm at home, I got a baby, I can't have a job. What am I gonna do? Here's resilience. I said, I'll go to law school. And the consequence was, I practiced law for about 45 minutes, and then went back to my first love, which is teaching. But it let me get into fights.
When you
It
can't
gave me new tools.
teach.
And the reason I'm standing here today is because
That's a terrible
I got
expression.
back up,
I just think it's
fought
funny.
back. I know what's broken. I want to be in the fight to fix it in America.
Thank you,
That's why I'm
Senator.
here.
Senator Sanders.
Figure too a little bit.
Resilience to me means growing up in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York, the son of an immigrant who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket.
Fuck me, right?
Professional resilience means to me, George, running for U.S. Senate in Vermont and getting 1% of the vote. Running for governor and getting 2% of the vote. Finally becoming mayor of Burlington, Vermont with 10
Trey, you can
vote
record that
margin.
and put it into LLN
What
chat.
resilience means to me is that throughout my political career,
Figures.
I
He
have
came from
taken on
Vermont.
virtually every powerful special interest in this country. Whether it is Wall Street, whether it is the insurance industry, whether it is the pharmaceutical industry whose corruption and greed is killing people today, whether it is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial complex. And I feel confident that given a lifelong record of taking on powerful special interests, of standing up for the working families of this country, that I will be able to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%.
Oh my gosh, they're the same thing. The corporate elite and the government are the same thing.
You know, every
What happened?
office I've run
I don't
for, whether it be district attorney or attorney general, I was told each time.
I seriously think I fell asleep for a
can't
minute
be
there, but
done.
then I got upset.
They said nobody
I'm
like you has done
joking,
it before. Nobody is ready for you.
Hi,
when I ran for DA, I won and became the first black woman elected.
I'm gonna turn
DA
her piercing
in a
voice
state
down a
of
little
40
bit.
million people in San Francisco. When I
We're
ran
dual
for
For the
attorney
radiance
general in
coming from my
California, I was elected because I didn't listen. And I was the only
Someone
black
watching
elected
this
woman
live
back
stream is
elected,
smoking
attorney general
marijuana.
in the state.
What?
Put him in the slammer.
Each time
Jail.
people would say, it's
Prison.
not your time, it's not your
To jail,
time, it's
right
gonna be
away.
too
Go
difficult,
to
they're
jail.
not ready for you. And I didn't listen, and a part of it probably comes from the fact that I was raised by a mother who said
we're split 50-50,
many things
Yeah, it's
that
all
were
good.
life lessons
Yeah.
for me, including don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell
He
them
can't
who
see you
are.
here, Quirt.
And
This is
when
just
I
all
look
of us.
around
You can
the
vent.
town halls that we do in this race for president of the United States, and I look at the meetings that we do
I
in
think
the
my
community
biggest
meetings,
issue
and
with
I
Kamala
see
Harris
these little girls
is
and
that
boys,
she is
sometimes even brought
the
by their
number
fathers,
one
and they bring
example
them
up
to me, and
here
I
of
talk
a
to them during these
disingenuous power
events,
struggle.
and they
Ooh.
smile,
Now there are a lot of
Disingenuous?
them
and their fathers
Yeah.
tell them, see,
completely. Like
don't
not
you
even
ever
like yeah,
listen and let
I really
anybody
want to
ever
be
tell
president
you
because I
what
feel
you
like
can
being
or
president
cannot
would
be.
be
You
the
have to
best.
believe in what can be.
I'd appreciate that more
unburdened
than
by what has been.
I have
Senator
never
Harris,
abused
thank you
power.
very much.
I will
Mayor
never
Buttigieg.
abuse power. I don't like
I know you
power.
will.
I've literally just done everything in my life to get power.
You know, as a military officer serving under
Quirt, we have
Donald
extra
Trump's
stuff.
help,
I know you will.
and as an elected official in the state of Indiana when Mike
Listen.
Pence was governor. At a certain
Disingenuous.
point, when it came to
They're
professional
all-
setbacks,
But if
I had to wonder whether
she's the
just
most-
acknowledging
That's pretty
who I
bad.
was
that's
was
rough.
going to be the ultimate career-ending
Disingenuous
professional
person up
setback.
here.
I came back from the deployment and realized that you only get to live one life, and I was not interested in not knowing what it was like to be in love any longer. So I just came out. I had no idea what kind of professional setback it would be, especially because, inconveniently, it was an election year in my socially conservative community.
I feel like we have connections.
What
Oh,
happened
We do.
was that
Oh my
when I
God.
His
trusted
ex-girlfriend.
voters to judge me based on the job that I
Be
did
like-
for them, they decided to trust me and reelected me with 80% of the vote. And what I learned was that trust can be
Dude, he is the little
reciprocated.
guy. He's,
And that
he's,
part of how you can win and
He's a little
deserve to
butler.
win is to know what's worth more to you than winning. And I think that's what we need in
Morty.
the presidency.
Morty.
Morty.
We have to
Morty.
know
No,
what we
Rick.
are about. And this election is not about
I'm not going on your
any of us
adventure.
as
Go, Rick.
It is not about this president, even though it's hard to talk of anything else
It's
some days.
Morty.
It's about the people who
That's what I
trust us
think
with
when I
their
look at him. I
lives.
see Morty.
A kid wondering if we're actually
Yeah,
going
he
to make
looks
their
like him.
schools safe when they've learned active shooter drills before they've learned to read.
What do you mean,
A
Andy?
generation
I
wondering
told
whether
you where it
will
was.
actually
And
get
what
the job
time?
done.
Andy!
And if we hold
Yeah,
to
I didn't
that,
share anything. I'm sorry,
then it doesn't
Andy.
matter what happens to each of us professionally. Together,
But it's all over
we will
YouTube.
win a better
It's
era
all
for our
over. It's all over YouTube,
Thank you,
Andy.
Judge. Thank you. Mr. Young.
If you would have put forth a little effort, you would
I
have
was an
found us.
unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months, and I left to start a business. And I'm going to share with you all one of the secrets to entrepreneurship. If
hurry.
you want to start something,
Secret. Gotta
tell
hurry.
everyone you know you're going to do it. And then you don't have a choice. You put your heart and soul into it, and even though I did that, my company flopped. Had its
Oh, it's
mini
my
rise
fault.
and maximum fall. Lost investors, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Still owed $100,000 in school debt. My parents still told people I was a lawyer. So it's a little easier. So I remember lying on my floor, looking up, wondering how it had come to this. Eventually, I picked myself back up. I kept working in small growth companies for another 10 years and eventually had some success. Then after I did have some success, I still remembered how hard it was, how isolating it was, how it feels like your
Johnny,
friends no longer want to spend time with you. And so I spent 7 years starting and running a nonprofit that helped train young entrepreneurs around the country, including Sean Wen, who's here in the audience tonight, who left his gilded Wall Street job to become a food entrepreneur in San Antonio. Sean, I hope I made the
That's not
process a
quite
little
how
bit
it
easier
went,
for you than it was
Nachos.
for me.
A
But
little
the
bit more
goal of my
complicated than that.
campaign is to make this an economy that allows us to live our human values and
There were
aspirations.
multiple parties in between there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Young. Senator Booker.
In fact, the Democratic Republicans was a party for a long
my
time.
biggest professional setback is embarrassing because a lot of folks know about it. I, with a bunch of tenant leaders in Newark, New Jersey in 2002, took on the political machine, and boy, did they fight back. I had
Yeah, they do.
tires on my car slashed, the campaign offices were broken into, my phones were tapped.
Wow.
It became a spectacle, and we lost that election. And here's a bit of advice to everybody. If you're going to have a spectacular failure, have a documentary team there to capture it, because it made for an Oscar-nominated documentary called Street Fight. But then, unfortunately, another setback, it lost in the Oscars to a movie called March of the Dagnab Penguins, for crying out loud. The people in my community living in the projects told me, don't give up on the
This
people,
guy's so
the
edgy.
people won't give up on you. Create bigger and bolder coalitions and you're going to win. And you know what? We came back 4 years later and won the largest lopsided victory in our city's history.
Tell you what, I
More
love
than
Cory
that, the
Booker
lesson
because
was
I don't
there.
listen to what he's
We
saying.
didn't give up. We were taking on America's toughest problems, from crime to poverty.
I just listen
And
to how he's saying
we
it.
transformed our city, creating tens of thousands of new jobs, the biggest economic expansion in our city. And as I said before,
Got a lot of
turned around our
expression.
school system. There's more
Look at
work
that
to
face
do, but I
go.
haven't given up on the
Those
people.
eyes are
I
everywhere.
still live in that community. But this
Hey,
is
I
the
hope
big
you're
lesson.
capturing this for
My
LLN
staff and
chat.
my friends in my community told me, if you want to go
Dad just
fast,
mooned
you may
Booker.
have won the mayor's race, but that's not what life is about. There's an old African saying that says, if you
Again,
wanna go
another
fast,
thing that
go
explains a
alone.
lot about
If you want to
Trey.
go far,
Love
go
it.
together. The lesson I learned of resilience is to trust people, because the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And the test of America right now, it's not a referendum on Donald Trump, it's a referendum on us and who we are.
No, I
and
tell you
who
what,
we're
I'd
gonna
love
be
to see an
together.
open cokehead
We need
in the
to
office.
use this moment in history to unite in common cause and common purpose, and then there's nothing
here's what we're gonna
we can
do.
do together as a nation.
Senator Booker, thank you.
We're unstoppable.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, George.
Pumped.
Everything that I've learned about resilience.
Oh, Trey, that's so
I've
great. I
learned
love your
from
family,
my
too.
hometown of El Paso, Texas.
Change.
In
David.
the face of this act of terror that was directed at our community in large part by the President of the United States that killed 22 people and injured many more.
And you
We were
can't
not
come down here
defeated by
without clothes
that,
on.
nor were we defined by that. The very thing that drew
Go to
that killer
intercept.
to us is the very thing that
Intercept.
helps us set the example for the rest of this country. We don't see our differences as disqualifying or dangerous. We see them as foundational to our success, to our strength, and to our security, and to our safety. Yesterday, I was visiting with one of those victims. He's the head coach of the Fusion. This is a girls' soccer team of 10 and 11-year-old girls. His name is Luis. He was shot in the legs multiple times. He was shot in the side multiple times. He's still healing from his wounds in the hospital, but from his hospital bed, he's still trying to coach the Fusion girls' soccer team. Memo, his co-coach, is still fighting for his life right now at Del Sol Hospital. Those two men, Jessica and Marcella, their wives, they exemplify resilience to me. And when we end this scourge of gun violence in this country, when we finally confront the racism that exists in America, when we're defined not by our fears, but instead by our aspirations and our ambitions, it will be in large part, I think, thanks to the example that El Paso has set.
Congressman, thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
Oh, Lord.
My challenges and resilience have brought me up here. I grew up with a dad who struggled
Something
with
brought her up here.
alcoholism.
Like the
his
meanest
whole life.
person on the stage.
And after his third DWI,
I can totally
he
see
had a
it.
choice between jail and treatment. He chose treatment with his faith, with his friends, with our family. And in his words, he was pursued by grace. And that made me interested in public service because I feel like everyone should have that same right to be pursued by grace. I then got married. My husband's out there somewhere, hopefully smiling. And our daughter. And our daughter was born. I had this expectation we were going to have this perfect birth. And she was really sick. And she couldn't swallow. And she was in and out of hospitals for 1.5 years. But when she was born, they had a rule in place that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. She was in intensive care, and I was kicked out. And I thought, this could never happen to any other mom again. So I went to the legislature, our state legislature, not an elected official, and mom. And I advocated for one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And when they tried to delay the implementation of that law, I brought 6 pregnant friends to the conference committee, so they outnumbered the lobbyists 2-1. And when they said, when should it take place, they all raised their hand and said, now. That is what motivated me to go into public service. And when I got to that gridlock of Washington, D.C., and got to work and pass over 100 bills, and I know a lot of my friends here from the left, but remember, I am from the middle of the country. And I believe if we're going to get things done, that we have to have someone leading the ticket with grit. Someone's going to not just change the policies, but change the tone in the country, and someone who believes in America and believes it from their heart because of where they came from, that everyone should have that same opportunity.
Senator, thank you.
Secretary Castro.
And thank you, George, to Jorge, to Lindsay, and to David, and to all of y'all for tuning in tonight. In many ways, I shouldn't be here on this stage. You know, Castro is my mother's name and was my grandmother's name before her. I grew up in a single-parent household on the west side of San Antonio, going to the public schools. Eventually, my brother Joaquin and I became the first in our family to become professionals. And when I got home, I took a job at the biggest law firm in town. I was making $100,000 a year in the year 2000. A few months later, I got elected to the San Antonio City Council. And the City Council at the time was only paying $1,040 a year. So everybody had another job, and my job was at the law firm. Well, a few months after I got elected, the law firm got a client.
Christian froze up
And the client wanted those of us on the city council to vote for a land deal. The land deal was that they wanted to build
I feel
a
offended
golf
that
course
Quirt
over
ran
a
away
water
to your
supply.
chat.
An underground aquifer. I didn't
He's
think
just
the
here for a
environmental
sec, you
protection
know,
plan
it's
was
all
strong
good.
enough. So I wanted to vote against it.
I feel like
And my
I'm whispering
constituents
in
wanted me to
church.
vote
Get
against
outta
it.
here.
Oh, he's watching our
For
chat.
lawyers in Texas, because believe it or not, lawyers have ethics rules. You can't just go against the interests of a client. So
He's
I was
watching
stuck.
court.
On the one hand, I wanted to do the right thing. On the other hand, my livelihood, my student loans, my new house payment, my car payment depended on me shutting up, being conflicted out. So one day I walked into my law firm and I quit my job. And then I went and I voted against that land deal on the city council.
Brave. So brave.
And
It takes balls. I mean, I'll give that.
Sure.
it was the first test that I
Takes
had.
balls to give
and
up
I
your
think
career
back to
for
that
something
because
you believe in.
oftentimes we think of politics and you think of politics as
What kind
dirty.
of politician would do
or
that?
corrupting. I wondered before I went into whether it
look,
would
Quirt's
change
in your
my
chat.
laws.
Lead.
And I was proud that when that first test came,
Maybe it was a
that I
one-time
stood up
thing.
for the people that I was there to represent, and not for big
Oh, hello,
special
Quirt. I
interests.
see you never left the chat.
There's nobody that gets tested more in a position of public trust than the President of the United
Oh,
States.
God, I have to pee.
This president has failed that test.
We're almost done,
But
right?
I want you to know that if you elect me president, I won't.
Best.
I won't serve anybody except you and your family.
Ooh,
and
me?
together,
Directly?
we
He's
can
looking right at me.
create an America that's better than ever. Thank you very much.
Castro.
Wow, me! He looked directly at me.
And then even the walls
Great
collapsed.
debate. I think we learned a lot tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to Texas Southern University for hosting us tonight. It was a great crowd.
This is it. All right.
Oh,
so we
shit.
have a bunch of different conversations going on in the chat. Debate's over. Don't care about literally anything else they have to say.
And George, thank you. A
But
great
I
debate
like
tonight
the
with
layout.
you and all of our terrific moderators.
We're just
Debate
gonna
is over, as you
go
said,
to
but still
this.
so much to talk about and so much to watch right now. And we are going to be watching Vice President Joe Biden
Actually, we'll
and
make it
Secretary
so.
Castro.
I knew you were
have
waiting to use that one.
There on the stage, it looks like they may not be shaking hands. Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, you work with Joe Biden in the White House. That moment where Secretary Castro went after Vice President Biden upset you. You say your phone started to blow up, people started to text you. What were Democrats
What do we
telling
do
you?
now?
I think for Castro.
Well, I
that
was going to talk
he
about
couldn't
some of the
make
things
a
that are
point,
happening in my
legitimate
chat,
point.
and also just kind
Was
of
it disqualified?
Yeah, let's
And
listen
also
to Christian. I want to hear what he has to say about
Totally
everything.
put Mary's
strong
boobs
moments,
on
some
your
with humor,
screen.
some with
Put what,
argument,
my what
some
now?
with the passion,
Your boobs are on
energy they
Christian's
brought.
screen now.
Why?
For Castro, and his pose was very good, but that was
They
a
were already
disqualifier
on
the
there.
way
I
he
just
handled
made
it. It will
them
come
larger.
across
Oh.
as mean and vindictive, and that's
Okay.
not who he is. But I think
guess
each of these
so.
guys actually
See if
advanced.
I can
Make
fix
them
this.
Amy, Kamala,
He moved himself.
they,
Hold on, I gotta
all
find
advanced
where he's at
themselves in
now.
one way or
Okay.
another here.
Yvette Simpson, you saw the moment a different way. You're
So I am.
I see what's happening.
You know, he was
Yeah.
interrupted by the vice president. He was
so-
and he was interrupted.
I'm really excited to hear about what Christian has to say about all this because y'all know we don't know shit, and Christian's got some good stuff to say. So let it out, bro.
I mean, most of the stuff, if you've listened to the show before, my show, you probably knew what my opinion was going to be on a lot of these things beforehand. So we more do these for fun so that people can watch and listen. And by the way, if you guys haven't yet, the link's in the bottom of this corner, the screen here. My channel and Liberty Late Night down here both do streams for the things like the debates. We
I got
do
this all messed up.
podcasts. Yeah, they have their own show that they do. And I mean, I've got a booked schedule coming up. I've got basically the whole rest of this month blocked out for interviews.
Yay!
That's great.
Yeah, all sorts of people from other podcasters to thinkers in the community. Trisha Stewart's going to be on. Yes. Sherry Voluntary. We got
Awesome.
Alan Mosley. We have all these different names that are coming by. So if you guys like to be a part of the conversation, I please encourage you to come by. I don't care what your political affiliation is. I want anybody who is willing to come over and be a part of the conversation. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm
Oh, did he freeze? What happened?
He froze.
Dave.
I didn't do it.
What happened? Christian, come back!
No, he froze.
Oh,
It's
no,
weird.
did he freeze on our stream? Not on his stream. He froze on ours. Is he fine on his?
Froze on Discord.
Oh, no. No. Yes, Liberty After Dark is a great show. Yes. Okay, so I'm not the only one to see that he... Hurry, someone message him.
Oh, maybe his whole stream died.
Why would it, though? That's so sad.
Yeah, so you guys
He
are...
has things to say, guys. He's got shit to say. Christian has things to say about what
So we're gonna
happened
carry on, yeah.
in the 3 hours that happened tonight.
He's going to give
He has got
big rundown of everything going on.
yes,
You know what? I'm
big,
just going to go to
beautiful
our regular
rundown.
screen.
A big.
Oh, that's 'cause
beautiful
that's
rundown.
working. Okay, so we'll do that.
So I'm pretty sure I died a little inside each time any of them talked, but it's all right. I mean, you know, I have to try to understand that they're. Yay! Yay! Oh God! Thank you, God. Oh,
stream went down.
Hold on. Where's Discord?
Wait, I hear Christian. Can anyone else hear him? No one else can hear him.
All right, you're on our stream still.
Dude. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, people on your stream
Wait.
said you're gone.
Yeah,
I
I'm
can
just
hear you.
coming back
Oh,
on.
I can
Let me
see you.
just
Okay.
say.
Can you get back onto your stream? Like, can that?
But yeah,
Fine.
What happened?
you're on ours.
Yeah. Okay. I'm back live. I don't know if it's gonna pick up where I left off or if it made a new stream. I think it should pick up where I left off, but
Also, a
Let me
huge
see
shout
real
out and thank you to you because you set this all up
That
and you
was
let us
terrible.
come in
Yeah, and
and
steal
hang
all
out
your shit.
and be here and like piggyback off of your stream. Like we've had fun doing this together, and then you're like, "I'm gonna do this," and I'm like, "Why are we doing this?" You know?
I just got beat.
Dave got beat down. He's like, "I haven't checked my messages." Thank you, Christian, because you offer this beautiful insight that I don't understand. So, teach me, tell me, what are your thoughts once you get situated?
Wait, did he?
Yeah, it still says the stream is offline. Why does it say that?
Okay.
I'll give it one more shot, and
Yeah.
then you'll just have to go over there and tell them to come watch you guys.
Okay, yeah. Sure,
It's whatever.
She
It's not
does,
that big of a
Donnie.
deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's moved over yet, but
I feel like people need to hear what you have to say because you have
it's
a lot.
really not like I was more interested in the conversation that was happening in the chat than I was even with the actual what was going on with the debate. Funny enough, yeah. Okay, so the live event ended. I'm not going to start another stream. I'll just post on the community tab. Sorry for the technical error or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so whatever. This is LLN exclusive content.
Wow! Oh my
Congratulations.
gosh!
You guys are winners.
Hashtag
I'm actually
blessed.
just switch over to my webcam then, so you guys don't have to.
You look good how you're at right now.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But what I was getting at is they were talking a lot about history, and this is something that, coming from the third angle, I see all the time, and it has to do with the idea that there's like you'll hear, oh well, Republicans are responsible for this, and Democrats are responsible for that, and it's like, oh well, Democrats are the party of the KKK, blah 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 blah, and these things are so like once you step away from the two parties and you don't feel like you owe either one of them to support them, you start to realize that these two ideas are so they're so just they're boiled down versions of the truth. You're missing all of the details and the nuance that happened in between there. So when you're missing literally, like they were saying, oh well, it went straight from Whigs to Republicans. No, there's like 4 political parties that existed between them. That doesn't mention Federalists and Anti-Federalists. That doesn't mention the Democratic Republicans. That doesn't bring up literally any of the parties that existed before the Republicans and the Democrats were the two major parties. So, I mean, it's just party allegiances like that kind of ruffle my feathers. And they were also talking about climate change. And I was going to say right before I got cut off, I really want to do an episode where I just talk about climate change, where I have one of my lectures like I did with, for example, the U.S. government, when I did that whole one where I just broke down pretty much everything that was screwed up with the U.S. government institutionally. And I want to do the same thing with climate change because I feel like there is truth to both sides of the political story. But what there isn't is there's no consistency as far as who can agree on what. And that's an issue because there are facts here. There are facts in these conversations. And there are exaggerations in both sides of these conversations.
They exaggerate? What?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's crazy.
And it's just important to...
I would like to hear that though, because I do feel like when they say climate change, I'm just like bah. Like that's just, so I would like to hear the
climate change is real. Pollution is an issue.
Sure.
These are real problems. Will it kill us all? Probably not. Will us completely changing away from all fossil fuels fix the planet? No. Almost certainly not.
And then
We
in
make a very
15
little
years,
impact.
in 15 years, are we all going to be dead because of this?
No,
because
we're not all going to be dead in 15 years. In fact, trying to switch over to that in 15 years will probably do more damage to us as a society than the environment will.
Wow. So do that because I'm very interested in everything that you have to share about that.
Just take everything that they've said. You don't even have to jump between people. Total student loan debt forgiveness.
Yeah.
A brand new infrastructure program. Complete removal of fossil fuels from our energy. We're talking about $50-60 trillion of spending. Complete reorganization of public schools.
Yeah.
A fucking redistribution of wealth through a what are they calling it? Reparations tax. Like, these are programs. This is so much money. We're already in $22 trillion of debt. And you're right. Everybody who says like that doesn't matter, you're right. It hasn't mattered for years, for decades, because we've played the game. But the day it fucking matters, it's gonna be really bad.
It's gonna matter really hard.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be like, oh, this matters a little bit. It's gonna be like, oh, okay, this matters.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we accelerate like these plans would, there's no way you're gonna be able to tax rich people enough to pay for over 10 years, $60 trillion worth of program and stimulus.
And don't we
no
want to like not
way.
tax people? Like, isn't that? I mean, as a libertarian or anarchist, like
we do, of course, we do. But I'm
Yeah.
talking from their. I'm just trying to make their own idea make sense at all. Like, how could this possibly work?
Right.
And I'm having a really hard time with that.
Yeah.
So the issue, like I said, the issue here is is that we are getting to the point where we're selling votes.
Oh, I can't.
Thinking about consequentialism. We're thinking about, does this make me feel good at the end of the day? Does
Yeah.
someone get health care? Does someone get food on their table?
Yeah.
Yes, we'll do it. We'll pay that cost. That's consequentialism. There's consequentialist libertarians. Those are like your wall libertarians and people like that who say that the benefit of violating someone's rights or taking someone's money is worth more than how bad it is to take the money or to violate
Yeah.
their rights. And obviously, that's not an ethically consistent or founded position. So it's not permissible. It's not something that you do in a civilized society. People say taxes are the price we pay to live in a civilized society. I think it's the other way around. Stealing
Yeah.
from people is not the marker of a civilized society.
No, it is not.
It's barbarism. It's feudalism at
Yeah.
its finest. It's archaic.
Yes. How can that be civilized society? You're forcing me at gunpoint, basically saying that I am going to go to jail if I do not pay my property taxes or my income taxes. When you say they're selling votes, can you elaborate or explain, like,
I will
that?
give you $1,000 a month if you vote for me.
Oh, okay. There you go.
How is that not literally selling your vote? Like, I get it. Like, his
Right.
theory, his
Yeah.
economic model, fucking perfect. But how do you, besides the people who are already brainwashed to not like him, who's new to politics especially and says, like, I want $1,000 a month.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who doesn't say that?
I know.
Really? I mean,
And-
my
and-
brother,
and-
I was talking to my brother about politics because he knows I do this show and he likes to be, you know, engaged somewhat. And he was like, yeah, I kind of like Andrew Yang. And I was like, you shut your mouth. Right? No,
dirty mouth.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he can do whatever he wants. It's his vote. But,
sure. So
you know, I just,
it's hard. I mean, you know what? I think as all people, we all think like, wow, it'd be so great to just like have that given to me. That'd be so amazing. Like, I mean, wouldn't it be awesome to just have it
have
handed
free
to me?
healthcare.
Yeah, but
Have your student debt forgiven.
I know, right?
Wouldn't that just be great?
Oh my gosh, but that's where like I feel like Dave and like I and all of us, like we're just like a little, like we're different because we think like of the
You just have to take a
repercussions.
step back.
Yeah,
You
like
take one step back and you stop thinking about you.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. You know, selfishness is a natural phenomenon of being a human.
Yeah.
It's part of being us, and that's not.
I mean,
a
it'd be
bad
amazing,
thing.
but it's not gonna work. It's not gonna be okay. It's not gonna make things better. It's not the way. It's not the way.
A lot of it does come from selfishness. A lot of it is about consequentialism, and consequentialism isn't ethically sound. Consequentialism is how we get reactionary policies like gun bans. Consequentialism is what gives us vaping bans, right? Because
As I'm vaping right now.
Yeah, the argument is, you know, okay, well, if we don't ban vaping, 10 people could die, and if we do ban,
And then I freak out. Right. Yeah. It's frustrating. Where? like, where's it gone? I can hear him. Oh, but no, wait, hold on.
I did a thing.
Okay,
It's
wait,
my
hold on a
fault.
second. Dave's gonna do a thing back to where. Okay, so I want to ask, as Dave brings your audio back, because I was talking about this right before one of the breaks had ended, but okay, so there's poverty. I don't know. Should I say poverty or is it just cultural? What is it? You know, Lower East Side. It's
should be back.
What
it can be a mixture of things. We can't
but
hear the intellect.
It's different. You know, it's different. It's not. I'm not judging. It's different. And
okay, let's just be objective. Okay, let's just fuck the PC bullshit. Okay, let's be like adults and talk about problems.
All right.
So, is it a poorer community?
It is. It is.
It's a lower income community.
Yep.
Okay, so it's a poverty-stricken community.
Yep.
Is it a primarily minority community?
Yes.
I mean, these are questions.
Yeah, primarily. Okay, so primarily yes.
Minority.
Yeah.
Okay, that means they have a unique set of issues that affects them that doesn't necessarily affect other communities to the same degree.
Okay.
Right? So, whenever we get into these situations to where Quirt asked where I can find the podcast. There's a couple links on my Facebook page, but I can post one on the community tab for my YouTube channel. But you can find it everywhere. Fucking everywhere. You can just Google Liberty After
Christian's
Dark.
everywhere,
Stitcher,
guys.
iTunes, yeah.
He is everywhere.
Like I was saying. So what's the specific issue? Is crime high? Is unemployment high?
A little bit of everything,
Yes.
you know, like it's kind of all of it. Where it's the crime is high there. Oh, hi Jane. My kids are still awake,
The little ones
and the whole unemployment and schooling. They kind of all get shoved off into the same school because it's in that area, So it's all just. I don't know. It's like I feel like I want to like help people, but I don't know how to help people. I feel like I don't know. Is it my responsibility or is it like it just
No.
what is it?
Okay, those are two different questions. Is it your responsibility to help those people? No, you don't have to help anybody if you don't want to. But
how did they end up there? It sucks. It sucks.
It does suck. I mean, like, why do Chinese rice farmers be born Chinese poor rice farmers?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
At some point, we just have to accept the fact that as Americans, we were dealt the good hand, right?
Okay.
Whether you believe it's by a god or whether you believe that you just happened to roll the perfect dice and you were the one that popped out of there, the conscious being that you are.
Yeah.
And so then, I mean, people do grow up. I mean, I grew up in a low-income household, and they had to pull themselves up out of it, but we had less barriers than other people did.
Okay.
I'm not saying it was easy by any stretch of the imagination. Working a job with 2 kids by yourself is not easy.
Not
finishing school by yourself with 2 kids is not easy.
No.
I mean, these are problems. I mean, I grew up in a trailer for years. These are things that people have issues all over the place. And I'm not saying that everybody can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but that's where you as a member of the community have to say, where is my priority here? Like, are there starving children on the streets? And am I going to do something about that? If you say no, that's your prerogative, Mary. You get to do whatever the hell you want with your money. You can go buy hookers and blow with it for all I care. But if you say, I want to help some of these people, let's start a food drive. Let's start funds for some of these kids to go to college. Let's start a scholarship. Community funded scholarships. Let's start, I don't know, school supplies for kids.
Yeah. Yep.
These are all things that you can do and get the other members of your community involved. We all the time we think about, like, Bill Gates going back into his hometown and dropping $1 million in people's pockets. We can't do that. But we have methods and funds or things that we can do in our communities. And if other members of your community don't care, reach out to members in their own community. It doesn't have to be one to another. You can go into their community and be like, hey, look, I have this idea and it's going to take work. It'll take some of your money, probably more than you originally thought it was going to. But if that's something that you think is valuable enough, you can do it.
Yeah.
I have an entire episode, again, not to plug my show, but what you can do is what I called it. And it's just a list of different things that you could do in your life. In this particular instance, to promote libertarianism, but a huge part of promoting libertarianism is taking care of your fucking people.
Right. Right.
I'm not saying you have to jump to every beck and call and every time someone scrapes a knee or engine blows up, you have to be the one there with the checkbook to pay for it. Now, that's not how the world works. Sometimes people just have to take L's. You know, I've taken plenty of L's, even in my short time being an independent adult. Sometimes you just have to lose.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You know, I mean, I have a car that's just sitting somewhere because I can't sell it because it's either sell it to a scrapyard, but it's got a blown engine. It's had one in there for 3 years. You know what I mean? It's like I was 19. What am I supposed to do with that?
Right.
You just get dealt the shit hand.
Yeah.
What?
Your Taurus.
Oh, yeah. It sat in the yard until it disappeared.
Yeah, yep.
Exactly, right? I mean, you know, I just had to buy a new one. I had to take out a new loan. Did I want to? No. Would it have been nice if someone had just dropped down and given me a bunch of money? Sure.
Yeah.
I would have loved it. It would have been great. But should I expect that from members of my community to just take care of me? Not really.
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
It should be the exception, not the rule. And it is harder whenever there are people inside who are already in positions of poverty, because getting out of poverty creates poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of the school to prison pipeline before?
No. Whoa, gosh.
It's this theory of modern law enforcement that basically says that as you create communities to where you are creating future prisoners, right? So first off, you have these poor people in this community, right? And you police it heavily, etc., and you say it's because the crime rates are high, even whether they are or not. And then what happens is that first thing you do is you throw the dad in jail. Now that the dad's gone, you got a kid going to school and a mom who can barely afford to support him, because a lot of women in these communities are usually either unemployed or underemployed. So they're usually like working at a waitress, bussing tables or something like that, which, you know, some people can get by on that. Most can't.
Right.
Then what happens is that the kid underperforms in school because there are many factors that involve education. And granted, there are exceptions to this, but this is how the plan works, basically. The kid grows up to be exactly like how his dad was, because he doesn't know anything better and he either dropped out of school or barely finished, gets some random day job, and then gets thrown into jail. Or as a kid, probably most likely out of marriage, and then goes to jail. And then the cycle repeats. And you have the school to prison pipeline is what it's called.
Nice.
And so
that's so awful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
people
gosh.
who fail in education are statistically more likely to wind up in these situations of poverty. And this is like, there are always exceptions. There's the guy who went to high school and now is a millionaire.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome that he did so. But it is, and these are things that I can't really think of a good analogy off the top of my head, but these are not concrete systems, right? We can do things to help in legislation, like, you know, stop the police from being fucking predatory as hell.
Yeah. Yep.
Community, because that's a thing that's happening. But what we can also do is promote people not having kids out of marriage. Now, I believe marriage as an institution is stupid. I believe marriage is an institution. I will never be married under the. I've made that decision.
As a legal institution.
Legally married, right?
Yeah.
I may have a ceremony and everything, but I will never go to a courthouse and get that signed. I don't care.
That makes it complicated with like other stuff, right?
That's fine. Whatever. Put me in,
He's willing to deal with that.
I'm willing to deal with that to prove a point.
Yeah.
That's
I
fine.
think that's like the base level. Like, I can argue this to literally anybody.
Mm-hmm.
They have absolutely no reason to be involved in my relationship.
It's true. It's true.
We got to get the government involved in this. We are in love, baby.
Yeah.
Never
We
say
need
never.
contracts
I'm
on
telling
it.
you, it's a deal breaker, man. It's a deal breaker for me. Like, we can date as far as you want, but like, we're not really. I mean, we can move in together as far as I care, but we're not going to start going around and being like, we're married until, you know, we come to the conclusion that we're not going to a courthouse.
Yeah.
So,
That's love right
Until
there.
you accept that
Until you
we're
accept
not going
that
to a courthouse.
my principles say we are not involving the
but
government in this.
You might super duper find
No.
somebody.
No, you
who
find that
says,
girl and
yeah.
you know you're in love. Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
No,
Yep.
that's
break
cool.
my principles for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For my own mother in a lot of situations.
And that's why libertarians are so horrible.
No, they're wonderful.
Fucking principled people Not willing to bend or
Not
compromise.
backing down.
Douchebags.
Yeah.
Not backing down.
You know what? How about this? If they got rid of the certificate, or if they got rid of all the payment involved, and there was no registry, and all they did was give you a piece of paper that they typed up in the moment, and there was no like fees or anything like that, and I just literally picked it up and it was completely meaningless. Sure, I'd go get one.
And you could go to the
that's my
hospital and be like, "Yeah, I
compromise.
have right of attorney because I have this piece of paper I didn't pay for."
That's what you do. That's what you do, right? You get a general power of attorney in
something
most
like that.
cases. Or you get if like people who are in partnerships, like legal partnership, or
Yes,
that didn't have any of those rights, you would go get a power of attorney,
Yeah.
and you would make it last for 10, 20 years or whatever.
So Dave wants a piece of paper that says he can go through TSA without getting frisked. That's his thing. He's like, I'm not flying because that is the government.
Mostly harmless. Let me on the fucking plane.
I have to tell you, I went to the emergency room.
This
with
is freaking me out because you're on
my
the other side.
to see my dad like a week ago, and I walked in and I didn't realize that I was gonna have to go through like a metal detector and have to like put my purse through and all this bullshit for the emergency room. During the day, it was like 4
emergency
in the
rooms where the
afternoon.
criminals go.
So I'm there, and it's like the hospital. It's a hospital people. It's their own. Like they pay them. It's their people. So I'm just like, all right, that's cool. Like whatever, dude. Like this is like okay. I walk through, and they're like, oh, I beeped immediately, and she's like, it was the girl, and she's like, do you have an underwire bra on? I'm like, yeah, I do. And then she's like going through my purse, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awful because like
I also got this 9 on my hip. Does that matter?
I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's and just I have kids, so I'm just shoving shit in my purse just all the time, constantly, just and she's crumbs are flying everywhere, and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. I'm so embarrassed. But I was like, I got it because it was the hospital who hired these kids. So I'm like, does it get exciting down here sometimes? They're like, what? And I'm like, I mean, I'm not exciting, but like, like pew pew. But these fucking kids, but they signed up for it, and the hospital hired them. So I respected that because it wasn't like fucking government
private security,
right? I mean, it wasn't government mandated bullshit.
You agreed to it by walking in the hospital.
Exactly. Yeah, and
you can not like it as much as you want.
Yeah,
it is private.
But that's why
you
Dave
put a metal detector in front of your coffee shop. That's completely your right.
Right, but Dave does not want to go to TSA. We cannot fly anywhere because this man does not want to go through that because he's like, that is the government just taking away my rights.
That's one I have to compromise on. I do travel by plane.
Yeah.
I just don't have a choice.
Yeah, no,
I'd
you
never
do
come
not.
home.
You
It's
could not.
a long
2 weeks to
it's
get
a
there by
long boat
Right.
ride.
You could get any kind of disease on that boat.
Scurvy.
You could get
You could
scurvy.
get
Scurvy.
Gotta find myself a container of non-perishable goods and shit myself in it.
Oh my gosh. This is so much fun. Christian, I can't wait to hear, what are you going to do on Saturday? Tell us, do you have an idea what's happening for your show, or are you still kind of formulating?
Yes, I do.
Oh, tell us.
We have the amazing, not Governor Patrick Smith.
Oh, he's good.
Oh, dude, are you serious? Yes.
Saturday, what time?
We're talking about promoting libertarianism in the
Fuck
community.
yeah. Do it. Oh.
So that's on your YouTube Saturday. What time does that start?
Yep. That'll be Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern.
9 p.m. Eastern. Okay.
We'll put these
kids are going to bed at 8:30.
No, I love him. He's a very good personality on stream.
I have so much. I'm so much more involved when my children aren't talking to me. Like right now they're upstairs running amok, and it's almost midnight, so I have to go to bed. But I cannot wait to hear you guys have a conversation. It is going to be awesome.
After that, the 19th, we have the Sherry Voluntary Show coming on.
Yay!
26.
Yes.
26, Trisha Stewart, and that's what we've got for now.
That's great.
So excited! Oh my!
I'm waiting to hear back from Alan Mosley on dates.
Oh
next
yeah!
week. We'll
Oh
pick
yeah!
dates,
Yep.
but he said
Dude,
he's interested in coming on.
He is, and you guys are gonna have a fantastic conversation. I mean it, all of you.
That's gonna be great.
Christian, you're great. You're great. Oh my gosh, I'm gushing. I have to pee. I'm gonna go, but Dave's gonna shut it down.
She's
But
not gushing yet.
Did you say gushing or gushing?
I'm gushing.
But not yet.
I'm
Okay,
gushing at you because you're amazing to listen to. This is so wonderful. You break it down.
All you have to do is put your hand up like this and sound really confident. And then people listen to it. No, I'm
shit.
kidding. I'm kidding.
You gotta have some kind of knowledge.
Like no. I'm like I'm pretty sure not. This isn't working right now.
I don't know. You sounded pretty confident about how not confident you
Oh well, there we go. Wow. Yeah, it works.
Exactly, right?
Did I use the right hand? What if I use both hands like they
throw
did?
a thumb at him.
What if I do both hands like the debates, where they did this, and then this, and then this? Jazz hands! I love jazz hands.
Oh, that's Bernie.
What if I rate the finger? Let me get some phlegm in my throat. Bernie really needed to clear his throat tonight.
Right up in the microphone's face and give it the knife hand.
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
Ooh, hey.
Right there.
I want to talk about them beans and toast.
All right, beans and toast.
Beans and toast.
Get in contact with him, dude. That's another person.
Get in contact, please. I'm gonna let
I
Dave.
have so many people.
I'm gonna let Dave do this. Christian, I love you. I have to pee so bad. It's gonna be a mess if I don't go. But Dave's gonna do the thing. If you're here when I get back, that's great.
We're into that.
Not. This was fun. I'm out.
Yeah, it was fun. Okay.
Thanks for hanging out, man.
You got a dislike? Let me fix that.
What?
Bam. 2
There
to
you
1
go.
ratio. Yeah. 3 to 1 ratio. Look at that.
All right, good night, man.
Fucking golden. Take it easy, man. Later.
I don't like your T-Series. Nothing personal, kid. But I must go all out. Just this once. Bob's or Vagana, whichever will it be. Set the fuck down, T-Series, I'm here to spill the real tea. You're trying to dethrone me from spot on number 1, but you in the year you lose, so best think you haven't won. When I'm through with you, we're gonna be completely fucking done, cause we only just begun. I review you, 0 by bitch gone. So come on, T-Series, looking hungry for some drama. Here, let me serve you bitch lasagna. Bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. T-Series ain't nothing but a bitch lasagna. Bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. Look at T-Series, they just crying for their mama. Bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. T-Series ain't nothing but a bitch lasagna. Bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. T-Series just put themselves in their pajamas. So who the hell is Bob and why you wanna kiss him? Ew. I'm a blue-eyed white dragon while you're just dark magician. Oof. You got a fifth of the population in your nation, but I got 90 rolls the world, so hold your defecation. Oops. Multipatlo, what the fuck is that even supposed to mean? Your language sounds like it come from a mumble rap community. No papa, yes papa, Johnny. Now down all of the sugar and let's throw this fucking party with some bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. Look at T-Series, they just crying for their mama. Bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. T-Series ain't nothing but a bitch lasagna. Bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. Look at T-Series, they just wet in their pajama. Bitch lasagna, bitch lasagna. T-Series ain't nothing but a bitch lasagna. You got a population of 1.32 billion, but most your videos can't seem to hit even a million. Sabot! Why did you leave me?